I present to you a world where, with power and money, you can do anything, but someone who has nothing appears and beats everyone, beats men, beats women, beats those who hit women too. Let's go! The Valhalla Academy is one of the top 3 hunter institutes in the world. Every year, many hunters try to enter this institute, but with a success rate of 1 in 500, few succeed, and even among those who do, only 150 students can graduate. You can see that the level of difficulty is just like real life, right? On the first day of class, there's already a bunch of people training, and anything goes. People with nothing in their hands against people with swords. Watching them is the senior combat instructor, Lee Sang-cheol. After a while, someone named Yoo Min-jun arrives to see the candidate from his family who deserves all our attention. Yoo So-yeon, from the Yushin family, one of the 5 most prestigious families in Korea. Everyone who crosses her path is defeated due to her talent with mana and the sword. She is a promising talent, but she doesn't draw much attention from the instructor until it is mentioned that her family has communicated with a constellation guardian from the Yushin family. This grabs the instructor's attention. In this world, there are 5 chosen ones to be the constellation guardians, where it is normal for hunters to receive blessings and protection from the guardians or make a contract for it. Each of these 5 guardians has a different power. The Yushin family has the god of the sword, Jang San family, the god of spirits, Jin Choi family, the god of martial arts, Ocean family, the god of fists, John family, the god of the bow. Yu Yun, having communicated with a guardian, is a great genius with incredible potential. Passing the academy test will be easy, they say. This is so important that the whole world is watching through cameras. The fight of the 17-year-old super talent will be against Kim Juhyeok, also 17 years old. The instructors are even surprised at how calm the boy was knowing who he was facing. Confident in an easy victory, the fight begins. Our girl draws her sword, but there's no sign of the boy. She decides to attack. Her swordsmanship was incredible, as well as her control of mana, and the attack was precise. Guys, believe it or not, he just punched her in the chest and won the fight. Our protagonist was even disappointed with the fight. And now we see the real truth. 300 years in the past, in the Tower of Destruction, there was a fight between the owner of the Tower of Destruction, Brace the King of Destruction, and the martial king Kim Hyeon-oh. Even with equal footing, the fight ended with the victory of the martial king. Here, the foot was in the face, not equality. By defeating the King of Destruction, who was trying to destroy the world, he saved the earth. But his injuries were very severe. When the tower collapsed with the defeat of its owner, the brave martial king couldn't escape. He only had time to lament because he was always very poor and became a hunter to survive and wouldn't be able to enjoy the money, fame, and power he always dreamed of. Before entering the tower, he even prevented his disciples from entering because it was very dangerous, and in the end, it was indeed. But at least if it was only him being crushed by the debris, then he would be happy. Here you understand why he deserved to reincarnate. He deserved it. He reincarnated into the body of a boy 300 years after that day in the Tower of Destruction. His knowledge of his past life remained, so even with this new weak body, he is very strong. Currently, on Earth, times are peaceful, so he can finally have the peaceful life he always wanted. But nothing good lasts forever, and the curse system window appeared, informing him that in 5 years the Tower of Destruction would reappear in the world, and the great hero must prepare. In other words, the peace he dreamed of wouldn't last. The protagonist even thinks he should have burned Brace's body to ashes or something, but there's no use crying over the past. Anyway, in this era, the conditions of the tower should be easier, so he decides he will have his peaceful life and enjoy it even after this warning. The system also orders him to find his lost weapons and memories. For that, he must go to Valhalla, and the system gives him the exact address. Even without knowing what these weapons and memories were, or even what place this was, he went to the academy. On the first day, he defeated the most promising girl in a single punch. If he wanted to be discreet, it didn't work. On the last day, his opponent was a 17-year-old Hulk from the Ocean family, the Kings of the Fist. The instructor kept an eye on the protagonist. This time, his opponent knew what he did on the first day but remained confident. That's because the protagonist didn't look dangerous to him. He even said he would kill him in this fight. But the Hulk spoke in a way the protagonist didn't understand, using some slang. When the Hulk explained that he would send him to hell in this fight, the protagonist just told him to sit down and calm down. The opponent became furious. His talent that brought him here was his physique. His body was perfect. With little training, he achieved the results of geniuses. And there he was, another genius being humiliated by the finger of the poor and failed protagonist. Furious, he charged to attack the protagonist, full of exploding hatred. The protagonist knew his body wasn't as strong as his opponent's, and he recognized that. This punch might indeed send him to hell, so he dodged and then swept the muscular guy off his feet. Look at his style. The protagonist delivers the famous move everyone knows, the powerful chest slap, and once again, with just one strike, the opponent was defeated. He is experienced and counted on his opponent being stupid. There's already a lesson for you all. Take notes. The next lesson is how to hit on girls and make them fall in love with you. The Fist of Love. The protagonist wins again, confident that even though his body is weak, he will become even stronger than in the past. And this was seen by everyone and also broadcasted, with many scouts from the main teams watching the protagonist stand out among the elite families. One of them is the head of the kings of the Fist family. He saw the fight and, as an excellent martial artist, noticed the protagonist's talent. One detail is that the Hulk is his eldest son. The father said the son was reckless as always and attacked with everything on the first blow. The most amazing thing is that the protagonist was faster and handled it like a master. Knowing everyone must have noticed this, the old man wants to try to bring the protagonist into his family at any cost. The protagonist's next fight has an audience of shady men, which irritates the protagonist because it's a bunch of adults drooling over a little girl. This being the last fight to determine the ranking of those approved for Valhalla, his opponent is now the second daughter of the Choijin family. Her name is Choi Erin, 17 years old. At least she's prettier than the first one. Let's see if she's more talented. Her first move is to analyze the opponent's reaction. She does this, and there's an awkward atmosphere with both standing still. The protagonist notices this. She's using her brain and let him make the first move, which already made her better than the others. So he calmly moves his heavy hand towards her, approaching her inside. She uses her lightning sword, impressing everyone with her talent for using an elemental skill at her age. And meanwhile, the protagonist calmly watches this. When she sees an opening, she goes for it with force and wham, a powerful slash, but it hits nothing but air. He dodged so fast that when he appeared beside her, even I got startled. Imagine how she felt. Then he delivered the famous chest slap. She was caught off guard but not unprepared, blocking the strike with her sword. The protagonist starts to see more value in the girl. RM felt her whole body vibrate from the impact and knew that if it had hit her body, she would have died. Then once again, the protagonist appears in front of her before she can even react, this time mocking her, telling her to dodge this next strike. A short, powerful punch lands on her stomach, her sword glued to her belly, and she collapses, unconscious. Another fight won without holding back just because she was a girl. Kazuma approves of this protagonist. With this result, the ranking of the students is Kim Juhyeok in first place, Choi RM in second, and some extra in third, along with other extras the manhwa didn't show. Being first in the best academy in the world, of course, a million reporters swarmed him after the event, asking him everything. The protagonist got so irritated that he flipped them off and cursed everyone out on national television. Here are the comments on his video on the internet. NANI? Later, in Valhalla, the approved students went to enlist. For the protagonist, being there was no big deal, unlike the others who were so nervous they couldn't sleep. He noticed that none of the approved kids even wanted to look him in the eye. Could it be they were afraid of getting beaten up too? He then wonders if he attracted too much attention yesterday. His plan was just to get into the most important academy in the world, go where the system ordered, and then leave. On the first day, the students were taken to a virtual fighting simulation room. The professor was freaked out. This year, his class had 3 geniuses from the 5 main families, 2 cute girls, and the hot-headed Hulk. Just this made him scared. Then he realizes the guy who defeated all 3 is also in his class. The professor felt sick and even had his blood pressure drop. When he finally calms down and starts the lesson, he introduces himself and immediately causes confusion by teleporting everyone to another place or something like that. Judging by the name of the lesson, it's a simulation of another place. He simulates a goblin attack while emitting an aura of bloodlust to show the real world to the students. This scares even the geniuses from the main families. To them, it's hundreds of goblins wanting to devour everyone. Goblins in pairs, come here to show you something. Look at the size of this thing. The professor was satisfied with scaring the students, but there was one who felt nothing. So the professor calls the student and asks if he can defeat the monster outside alone. This made the protagonist think about it. The professor's intention was to lower the ego of the famous student by asking if he could do something impossible for him to deny, because no student could do it. He was just waiting for the protagonist to say he couldn't handle the goblins, to put the boy in his place. But to everyone's surprise, the protagonist gave a slight smile, which made the professor angry, as Kim Hyuk said he could do it. The professor, furious, shouted for him to go and try. The protagonist asked something before accepting, inquiring about the reward. Because this must be a test, he will only go if there's a reward. He will go if the professor makes a bet with him. The rage consumed the professor, and he replied that he would do anything the boy wanted. Imagine the possibilities for this statement. The professor began to explain how the monsters attack, but the protagonist said it didn't matter. He just needed a sword. He handed over the sword, and off the protagonist went, out of the protective barrier. Everyone was scared even within the barrier, the professor hoping the boy's arrogance would cause his defeat. Only violent cuts were seen by all, revealing micro-expressions of the protagonist's psychopathy. He thought it had been 300 years since he last held a sword to fight. When he was a child in his past life, he didn't have these skills. Now he returned to his childhood with the talent of a martial king. When a giant goblin tried to strike, the protagonist dodged effortlessly. Everyone inside the shield watched. The sword the professor gave him was trash, so it didn't make sense how he could cut cut everything with it. Naturally, the geniuses from the noble families were furious and envious, but one of them was moved, even blushing with emotion. The protagonist easily defeated all the goblins and told the professor he wanted to go to the Hall of Constellations as his reward for the bet, reminding him not to forget a promise. In the practical lesson, the protagonist was a god, but in the theoretical lesson, everyone was calm and confident. The protagonist was exhausted. This was the hardest battle he had in 300 years. The protagonist remembered he never went to school before. This thing called math was something scary. At the end of the day, everyone was heading to the dorms. The protagonist was thinking about the constellations since he knew nothing about them. 300 years ago, these things didn't exist. What he understood was that constellation is the term for those who achieve great fortune and power, treated like gods, usually hunters who reach the pinnacle of power. Valhalla is located in South Korea and is the third largest academy in the world, housing many constellation relics. He thought about many things about the current world, but what's interesting to us is that someone was following him. Shift the scene to the teacher's room, where the recently humiliated professor is recounting his class to the senior instructor, describing how a monster defeated 120 monsters in the simulation. We discover that the protagonist, or at least his body, is an orphan and not from an important family. If he was hiding his past, it wouldn't make sense for him to have attracted so much attention during the academy's admission test. The professor requests permission to take the protagonist to the place he asked for. He does this while feeling very sad about his problematic class. To console the professor, who is lamenting having 3 students from noble families in his class, the senior instructor says he is lucky not to have the exchange student from England, as foreign nobles are even worse. When he learns that his friend is in an even worse situation, the professor feels better about his own work. Nothing is better than knowing the neighbor's grass is worse than yours. Back to the protagonist, RM followed him. She went up to him and just stared for a while. What could she want? Want to get beaten up again? Yes. No. Just kidding. She went up to him to ask him to teach her fencing. The protagonist, being direct, says no without much thought. She persistently asks why not. Annoyed, he says he just doesn't want to. After this, the protagonist says he's leaving, but the crazy girl responds, "Teach me fencing." But I said no, damn it. He even questions if she's deaf, saying he said no, telling her to get out of his way, and leaves. And guess what? She stays behind thinking, "Teach me fencing." The next day, the protagonist Kim Hyuk was peacefully sitting in class, contemplating how weak his body was, with terrible mana control and 0 magical power. One way to improve this was to find that thing. Suddenly, someone approached him, the problematic exchange student from England, Rocto Ventric from the Ventric family, along with his assistant Uriah Felix. Since our protagonist knew nothing about the current world, he had no idea who the student was or the significance of his noble family. The arrogant student got angry, thinking the protagonist was ignorant, but still calmly explained about his family and asked if he wanted to become strong. The boy explained about the main families and their affiliated lineages, and how an affiliate could never reach the top. The Ventric family was different from the others because they had a constellation guardian in the family, giving them immense influence in the world due to the Raven Mask. The arrogant boy talked too much, so the protagonist told him to shut up, saying he wasn't interested in hearing this crap. Ventric even asked to make sure he heard correctly what the protagonist had said to him. The protagonist responded even more aggressively, calling him an idiot and saying he wasn't interested in him or in talking to opportunistic people. The guy was about to explode with rage, but someone ordered the students to sit down for class. The arrogant one turned angrily to see who dared to speak to him like that. It was the senior instructor. The instructor added that it didn't matter which family he came from. Here he obeyed the instructors or left. After being humiliated, he left the room, saying they would meet again. As the protagonist was leaving after class, thinking about what he learned, someone approached him from behind. "Teach me fencing!" She came to ask again, and he said no. Cut to the dormitory of the arrogant foreigner from England, who was breaking things in anger after being humiliated by the protagonist. To prove he's a scumbag, he ordered Uriah to do something she didn't want to do. He grabbed her by the hair, threatening to throw her out of the palace family, and other things until she agreed. His order was to call someone named Desera and give the order to eliminate Juhyeok. While some hated the protagonist, he was in his room training magic, but it wasn't yielding results with such a weak and impure body. In the middle of his training, he remembered the crazy stalker girl who followed him everywhere, always asking him to teach her fencing whenever he confronted her. He didn't know how to get rid of her, so he lied, saying he would give her a lesson for 10 million. He said this as he was turning to leave, but the girl asked for his phone. Confused, he handed it to her, and Aram added her number and returned the phone. I thought she was going to ask him out, but the crazy girl transferred 100 million to his account and said, "Teach me fencing for 10 lessons." The protagonist returned the money and said it was a joke, then left. Later, he thought maybe having money wouldn't be so bad, but quickly changed his mind, knowing money wouldn't be a problem once he got that thing. Dressed like an excavator, the protagonist went after that that thing, searching for a hidden 300-year-old vault in the mountains of the academy. There should be at least 3 or 4 of them hidden. With the little magic he had, he emitted a mana wave to locate the vaults. Entering the area, he pulled out a shovel and began digging. His body was so weak that after less than a minute of digging, he was exhausted. Like me, he rested for a while, thinking he should have buried the vault shallower in the past, and then resumed digging. It took him all night, but he finally found it. After searching for the lock, he made a key that only someone who knew the shape could create with magic and opened the vault. Vault closed, vault open, we're inside. The place was full of gold, but what he really wanted were the mana storage stones, the true treasure here. They had been here for over 300 years and were still amazing. Now he would have enough mana to upgrade his weak body. Plus there was so much gold here that he couldn't carry it all. The next day at school, after spending all night digging, his muscles were on fire. Choi Erin was about to ask again. The protagonist felt sorry for her persistence. He researched her family and found out the Choi Jin family was the only one practicing fencing. So he asked why she didn't learn from her own family. She said it had to be him because she had never seen anyone in her family wield a sword better than him. The protagonist was as surprised as you are reading this. Her father, the leader of the fencing family, wasn't better than the protagonist. As she was about to say something, the teacher came to call Juhyeok politely. Why now? It's about what you asked for before. Goodbye, girl. Choi Erin was about to ask again but changed her mind. Then, miraculously, Juhyeok said, tomorrow at 6 in the morning in the training field. She couldn't believe she was actually going to get a free lesson. After that, he went to the teacher's room. The professor said they had to be quick because there was a class starting soon. The protagonist's request for access to the Constellation building had been approved. He just needed to go to the school's basement, but he couldn't go beyond a certain floor. Juhyeok agreed, and that night after class he went. The professor was surprised the protagonist didn't mind only being able to go to the second floor of the building. So we skipped to the professor leading the protagonist to the underground building where Valhalla's treasures, the Constellation Hall, were kept. The place was heavily guarded, with more security here than at the academy's entrance, showing how important this place was. The protagonist observed that the tower walls above were covered with protective magic seals to the limit, as someone might hypothetically do to descend to the second floor unnoticed. Seeing his dangerous ideas, the professor warned that he would be arrested or expelled for trying, and it wouldn't work anyway, hypothetically. Not only that, the professor said that on the second floor, the power of the constellations flowed freely, and anyone entering would have their mind shattered by the power and go insane. The protagonist asked a few questions like this before entering, making the professor reconsider if he would get into trouble because of this kid. He was now in doubt, but after the protagonist entered, there was nothing he could do. Inside, the protagonist confirmed it. The system said that on the 5th underground floor were his memories and weapons, but he couldn't enter. But he came here for that, so he just descended anyway. As he went down the first stairs, he saw several vaults and nothing else. The system appeared to him, saying the requirements had been met, and he would be moved to the main hall. Everything went black until the protagonist saw the former king of destruction, who recognized him too. Barche said it had been 300 years since they last met. It was a grand reunion. The guy didn't even finish speaking before taking a punch to the mouth. The protagonist was furious. The guy asked him to calm down, and took another punch on the other side. He asked for calm once more and took a third punch to the mouth. 40 punches later, the protagonist got tired, now allowing the guy to talk. The protagonist then started with kicks. After 32 kicks, Barche managed to speak, explaining that this was an imaginary world, a space within a relic, and this body wasn't real. The explanation was that the king of destruction had become a constellation, but the protagonist didn't care and punched him in the mouth again. After waiting outside for 30 minutes, the professor saw Juhyeok coming out without any problem. The relieved professor asked if he did anything wrong inside. The protagonist replied, he did nothing. If he had gone down from the first floor, his mind would have broken, right? The professor agreed and left, thinking what a sly kid this protagonist was. On the way, he thought about the conversation he had. 99% of it was punches, and 1% was him asking if it was the king of destruction who made that system window informing that in 5 years the tower of destruction would reappear. Barche said it wasn't him. Furthermore, Barche revealed he also received a message with the system window telling him to recover his memories by meeting the reincarnated Kim Juhyeok. He explained that in the past, a mysterious person made him the owner of the Tower of Destruction, but he didn't remember the rest of his past life. Unlike the protagonist, who remembered everything from the past, they shared what their system messages said, and finally, Barche revealed that the protagonist's weapon was one of the 4 sacred relics, and Barche himself became a constellation because he used the sword as a relic.
You bastard.
Now the protagonist didn't understand anything. His sword became a relic, and inside it was a constellation, his former enemy whom he killed. He left with his sword, the kid having stolen a relic from the country's most important academy. Okay, the maximum security here is a joke. Some second-year academy students, lazing around, saw the protagonist and decided to test if his first place ranking in the entrance exam was a big deal. The protagonist, calmly wanting to know if they really wanted to get beaten, heard them say yes. The first would be the bald one, and he immediately struck his throat, and then his chest, sending the guy flying like a bird. The extra averted his gaze for 1 second, and when he looked back, the protagonist had his sword out and told everyone to come at him together. I would have left, but extras are always idiots. 3 hours earlier, the blonde was in the room of the English exchange student, and it was he who hired him to teach Juhyeok a lesson. As a reward, he would help his family. The kid from the Sunrise family accepted dealing with this because, as a second-year student, it was impossible to lose to a first year. Everyone who moved to the second year in Valhalla only passed when they went to the 4th floor and made a contract with one of the constellations. Someone like him, a contractor, was sure he could easily defeat him. That's what he thought until now, as watching the student defeat everyone like they were ants made him change his mind. It didn't even seem like he was fighting. Those who took too long to attack got beaten even harder than the others, leaving the guys wondering if they should flee or get beaten too. Everyone was crushed like ants, not one left conscious. Then the protagonist woke the leader with a slap and asked who he was and who sent him to attack. He gave his name but refused to reveal who ordered it. The protagonist wasn't irritated by this. Loyalty was good even from people who tried to harm him. The extra had the courage to threaten that the protagonist would be expelled when they found out he fought at the academy. Boys, the protagonist says it's fine. Spread the word that a first-year student defeated 10 second-year students. If they believe it, all 10 will be expelled too, ending their chances of joining a guild in the future. The protagonist won the fight and the argument. Later, the trash from England was waiting for a call confirming that the protagonist was crushed. When the phone rang, he heard only one phrase. "I'm dropping this job. You better not get in that guy's way. Goodbye." Ventric asked if they would at least report the protagonist to the academy, saying that if they did, the Ventric family would support them if they were expelled. Still, the kid refused and said goodbye. The power of fear won over money. After that, Ventric ordered a renegade member of his family currently in Mexico to deal with the protagonist definitively. The next morning, the protagonist was ready to train. He had scheduled a meeting with the fencing girl, and as he stretched, she appeared for the private lesson saying, "Teach me fencing." But the protagonist's response was, no. Before learning fencing, they needed to improve their physical conditioning. The girl, absent-minded, didn't understand anything beyond "teach me fencing." The protagonist had her stretched because the training would be intense. He noticed that people nowadays only train mana and forget about physical fitness, which is a mistake. Aram herself has a lot of mana, but if she runs 20 meters, she faints just like me. They started with 200 push-ups, 1, 2, 3 squats to strengthen the glutes and more gym exercises. After almost an hour, the protagonist said that this was just the beginning. When he mentioned that they were going to run 20 kilometers, the girl regretted wanting to learn fencing. Later, in the classroom, the protagonist felt the pleasurable pain after the training, while Aram was about to go into a coma from the pain. Her arm was shaking so much it seemed possessed. On this painful day, the teacher announced she would administer a written test on dimensional monsters and asked for silence from everyone. The test would assess knowledge on how to handle monsters. The girl with Makima's eyes took the test easily. The big guy seemed not to know much, and Aram answered all the questions with, "Teach me fencing." The protagonist was the quickest to finish the test and was waiting for the teacher to collect them. When time was up and she asked to collect the papers from the back to the front, Aram couldn't even turn her neck, so she asked for help. Everyone left the classroom, and the god of destruction living inside the protagonist's sword asked his master if he was sure about the answers he had marked. From what he said, they didn't seem to be correct. Soon after, we see the teacher in the staff room, upset about something. Among all the students, one had crossed all limits of common sense. She was furious with the answers of a certain student. While grading the normal students' exams, another teacher passed by wanting to know how his students performed. She said they all did well, as expected of the cream of the crop. This was good news, and then he was leaving happy. But when he heard the protagonist's name, he choked on his coffee. The teacher was furious with this student's answers, and in the next class, she was going to take him down. A week later, in the next class, with everyone standing, she asked King Juhyeok to step forward, and he did so calmly. Her goal was to confront his answers in front of the class to teach him to take the test seriously. According to her, there was no place in the world where his answers made sense. She questioned if he had taken the exam seriously. He said yes, so she began. "How do you deal with a goblin?" The student's answer was, "Punch in the stomach." The second question, "When 8 goblins run towards you, how do you defend yourself?" The student's answer, "Send them all to hell." The teacher was already irritated again with these answers. Another question was, "What do you do against a monster with very high defense?" His answer was, "Defeat with an even stronger hit. A punch will do." The teacher almost went crazy with this bold student, but he confirmed all the absurd answers in front of everyone. Then, to make him feel ashamed and admit his failure, she activated the simulation room to show the answers in practice. A goblin with very high defense appeared. She told him to show how his answer was correct. At no point did the protagonist get nervous, which was suspicious. He politely left his exam time for the teacher, and grabbed a sword, headed towards the goblin without any hurry. The teacher knew he had defeated 120 goblins in another professor's class, but facing a stone goblin with super high defense was different. When they attacked, she was confident the boy would face reality. The protagonist simply threw the sword at the stone goblin's stomach, which shattered entirely and was defeated. As I said, a stomach hit resolves almost everything. Everyone was impressed again with the protagonist, except Aram, who already knows the mysterious student's secrets better. Now, the teacher also wanted to know how he did it. He said it was just about hitting the stomach, there was no secret. The teacher was going crazy with this kid, but still asked about the second question. And the 8 angry goblins coming your way, prove your answer. He even questions if this was supposed to be challenging. She then releases the simulation that creates a cave and the goblins that will attack. 3 goblins saw him. The test was to use strategy to prevent these 3 from calling the others. Before she even finished thinking, the protagonist knocked down the first, toppled another, and thrust the sword into the last one's mouth. He didn't give the goblins a chance to call the rest. That's how the teacher learned that all his answers were correct. In the following days, Aram tried to survive the physical training before starting the fencing training. In the end, the poor girl could barely stand. The protagonist also got tired with the same training, but it seemed that Aram never got close to the protagonist's preparation. When he asked how Aram would face the class monsters, her answer was simple. She would borrow the power of the constellations. As the protagonist thought, they ignored the training and depended on these constellations for any battle. It's not that the protagonist is against doing this, but what if they enter a dungeon with magic restrictions or in a very long fight, run out of mana from fighting for so long? How will they deal with emergencies? He believes that true strength must exist in the person and only depend on help from an external power for convenience. Then, the protagonist asked if she thought that this exercise to improve stamina was a waste of time. Aram said no. She agreed with his lessons, but only agreed to train like this because he had said that only after this would he teach her fencing. With this answer, it means she hasn't accepted yet. She could finish today's training, but his will continue. In fact, he asked if she wanted to continue, but Aram couldn't take it anymore and left, otherwise she would die before training fencing. For the protagonist, the basis of everything is to have a powerful physique and then focus on mana control. That's why he places so much importance on this first. Beside him, the student he defeated was training and he hadn't even noticed. The big guy never stopped honing his body, even though he is considered the best of all in this regard. He said he trained there every morning. When the big guy left, the protagonist recognized that the boy's strength was his determination in his body. Aram, on the other hand, had her perception and good combat vision. After much training, the protagonist consulted the system about his mission. He went to the basement and picked up his weapon and left a replica in its place. Now, the next step was to go to a house in the Valhalla forest to recover another valuable thing. If it weren't for the system, he wouldn't be in a school but enjoying the luxuries of normal life that he hadn't had before. But at least he can hit the brace whenever he wants because of these system missions. Also, he wanted to discover more about reincarnation. Meanwhile, in England, at the Ventric mansion, the family that loved suspicious masks, Adelia Ventric was receiving reports from the butler about missions and about Rockdale Ventric in Korea, and about the boy's contact with the banished member of the family, Desira Ventric. Desira was the black sheep of the Ventric clan because he had committed several crimes using the family name, including attacking 5 students from the school. He was expelled from the clan at 20 and now roamed the world while continuing to embarrass the clan. Adelia, knowing of Rockdale's contact with this scum, ordered to keep an eye on him and inform Rockdale that if he did anything else wrong, he would be expelled like Desira. Adelia, besides being beautiful, seems to be honest. She is against those who use the power of the family for their own benefit, because the power of the constellation of the Ventric family can only be used for its own benefit. These are her principles and honesty. To set an example on this matter, the story cuts to a class on how not to use the powers of the constellations for evil. The teacher explains how those who don't like this video are criminals and contractors who use constellations to commit crimes are also. As the class continued, the protagonist just thought about his current body. In his life as a hero, when he was this age, his body was much worse than this boy's. Even if it's strange to have a weak body compared to what he had at the end of his life, this body evolves very quickly with his knowledge and can certainly become stronger than his true self. He doesn't understand why he was so sedentary and with such poor mana circulation at this age. Basically, the original owner of this body was not meant to be weak, and he still doesn't know what happened to the boy who owned this body before. During class, Makima calls the protagonist and passes him a note with just "hey" written on it. He doesn't understand why this other girl doesn't just write what she wants. A note just for that. Maybe all the girls here are crazy. Later, in the last class of the day, the teacher in charge announces that this weekend they will have permission to leave the academy, but they must notify the campus first if they intend to. The protagonist goes to inform that he wants to leave the academy during the weekend, and suddenly someone calls him with a "hey." He looks and sees it's the Makima from AliExpress. The protagonist immediately asks if she also finds it fun to follow others and make selfish requests, and why send useless notes that say nothing. He insists she just say what she wants from him, but the girl seems embarrassed and shy, unable to say a single word. It's not hard to irritate irritate our protagonist, so he tells her to say it now or go away, you crazy girl. She can't say what she wants, but can she question why she's a crazy girl? In fact, Makima wanted to ask the protagonist how he managed to destroy a goblin with a weak sword and no magic. This shouldn't be possible. He was so incredible and strong even without coming from a wealthy family. She wanted to talk more with him, but her pride wouldn't let her speak. After all, it's very important and noble to ask for help from a commoner. When it seemed like she was finally going to ask, the teacher appears and interrupts the two. The protagonist was focused on his life goal and girls kept appearing around him. He even asks if the teacher doesn't hate her due to the class in which she was embarrassed. The teacher says she doesn't care about that. She believed there was only one way to handle those situations, and he opened her eyes to the possibilities. She even says she is grateful to him now. The woman drags the protagonist, asking him to be her assistant. He refuses, of course. His goals now do not include learning what he already knows how to do. Makima in the end couldn't overcome the barriers of her pride, but realizing this didn't make the girl sad. Just one more who will fall in love with the protagonist soon. Returning to his room at night, the protagonist has a computer, but it's on his phone that he researches where he can sell the treasures he took from the safe. The place for this is called the secret market, a space where people from anywhere in the world can trade. It is known as the black market due to the wrongdoers who use it. The protagonist's deduction is that the market is illegal, but still the government does not interfere because it was created by an important constellation guardian. When he researches how to go to the market, he receives a message from Aram. The girl is very different in everything she does. She likes to send many emojis and makes it seem like a tragedy, but in reality, she just wanted to say that she will miss training because she needs to travel. He found it funny how dramatic she is, but is he laughing at her? Aram thought. But that wasn't it. He just wanted to wish her a good trip, and she really likes sending emojis. He hangs up the phone because the girl won't stop. So the next day he goes after the so-called market. In an abandoned cafe he enters and then just turns right. Through a normal door he passes through it, and comes out in another place where it's already night. This place seems familiar to the protagonist, something from his past life. But before he thinks more about the reason for that, someone calls him. A man in a leather jacket is the one who receives a fee of 2 million money to give access to the market and assist customers. The protagonist pulls out a brick of money that he won in the prize for being first in the academy, and uses this for his investment. Today's goal is to sell some jewels from his secret safe. The man in the leather jacket explains how the market works and recommends Morris's store at the end of the street for selling low-value jewels. Before he goes, the man hands a mask to the protagonist. Everyone here prefers to hide their identities, and even though the boy doesn't care about this, it's better to follow this custom. At the market everyone walks with masks. When he finds Morris's store, the protagonist says he has some things for him to evaluate, as he wants to sell. He takes out a simple bag from his backpack and places it on the table. Nothing that a student might have could be of high value. He picks up one of the rings to analyze and to his surprise almost dies of a heart attack. It was an artifact from the era of destruction, something extremely rare. Morris checks each of the items in the bag and sees that they are all relics of an ancient era. The protagonist is curious to know the value of these items, but Morris is curious to know how this boy has these things. He can't say exactly what they are worth right now and apologizes to the young client. The rings are so expensive that Morris doesn't have the money to buy them. Before responding to something, he questions where he got these rings. The protagonist comments that he thought such things weren't questioned here, and indeed, that's against the rules in this place. The truth is that Morris doesn't know the value of these items. They are so valuable that he suggests the best thing is to auction the rings in the market, but that would take 2 or 3 weeks. The protagonist insists on knowing how much Morris believes they would be worth at auction. Despite not being sure, he shows and says the minimum is this value. Although Hyeon knew that rarities in his past life did not expect such a high value, he couldn't even count how many zeros are in that number. The protagonist is willing to sell to Morris for that value, but Morris only has a quarter of that in his entire safe. Even though it's almost 5 times less than the minimum that can be expected at an auction, the protagonist accepts to sell for that value. Morris was amazed by such a good offer. The truth is that the value of these items goes beyond rarity. The reason is that the constellations that dominate the world and emerged after the era of destruction react well to these items. I would like to read the synopsis of this story for you. 300 years ago, Kim Hyeon-oh defeated the King of Destruction Brace, the owner of the Tower of the End, thus preventing the world from being destroyed. Kim Hyeon died in the collapse of the Tower of the End, but reincarnated 300 years later in the body of a 17-year-old named Kim Juhyeok. He ends up discovering that the constellations that were created while he was dead are his disciples who have been looking for him for 300 years. And today Morris is sure they are genuine. The energy of destruction is still strong in them, and whoever possesses one of these items can make a contract with the most powerful S-rank constellations in the world. Morris buys them all. Sometime later, someone goes to Morris and leaves a doubt in the air. The protagonist returns home. He sold for a value 5 times lower because he wanted the money urgently and didn't want to explain how he got it. He got so much money from those items that he won't have to worry about money for a long time. When he was going to return home peacefully, the phone rings. The meddling teacher had gotten his number from the school and practically forced him to go have lunch with her now. Although he is rich now, when the woman said she would pay for the food, he couldn't refuse and went to her. You must also have been curious about Morris. The person who appeared there is called Black Cat, and he is the owner of the market. That explains why Morris was stunned by his presence. They had never spoken in years of market because the man is extremely important. The reason for the contact is that Morris asked to participate in the auction for the first time in years. Then Black Cat wanted to know what he had to announce. Black Cat, in fact, works for the constellation that is the true owner of the market, and he examines the items before they go to auction because the constellation might be interested in them. As soon as he saw the rings, the constellation went crazy to have those items for itself. The constellation on the other side really wanted Morris's rings, and that's how Morris lost his ring that night. The teacher who called the student on the weekend paid for a pizza and a generous portion of shrimp pasta to try to convince him, once again, to be her assistant. The protagonist refused without even thinking twice. Anyone would want this opportunity, but he must be the only person in the world who doesn't care. She argued that she could get him a scholarship and that they could write an article together. She almost offered everything, even the most tempting things for men, but the protagonist still didn't care. All he wants is to get to the center of the big forest and fulfill the system's orders, and these distractions will only get in the way. As a last attempt, she offered information about Aram to get him to become her assistant. Even so, the protagonist didn't want to, but the teacher insisted and started talking about Choi Aram and how she is about to be disowned from the family. The teacher tried everything to convince the protagonist to be her assistant, but she couldn't. But he was curious about why she is so strict in class and so childish outside of it. The woman explained what she believes to be right. Dealing with monsters is something so dangerous that it cannot be treated as something easy and simple. They cannot forget the risks they run, and that is why they must always be cautious even with the weakest of monsters. This left him satisfied, and as he was satisfied with the food too, he left. Guys, the protagonist is literally the freest guy in the world. If he doesn't want something, he's not afraid to refuse. Now that the teacher mentioned Aram, let's go to her family, the Choijin. The leader of the True Story Guild and head of the Choijin family, Jeonseok, was with his 2 children, the eldest son Jingyan and the second daughter, Choi Aram. Jeonseok says they will have a big test where they will have a chance to inherit the family treasure and become the clan leader. However, whoever fails will be eliminated from the family. Then he asks if they are prepared to participate in the great test of the Choijin family. Both say yes, so, in 3 weeks, the test will be held. When the family meeting ends, the older brother asks if Aram didn't get to read between the lines. She can't even talk. Of course, she didn't read anything other than teach me fencing. The brother says that the father didn't want her to take the test and is just going through the formalities. An illegitimate daughter has no right to be the leader of the family. He's only agreeing with everything because they know she has no chance of winning. For the first time, we see the girl show her emotions. He throws in her face that he has a contract with a constellation and she can't even touch him in combat. He walks away while threatening to destroy her for sucking the family's money for so many years. Despite being raised in such a cruel world, Aram's determination does not diminish. Remembering her sick mother reminds her that her only option is to win. Her mother's dream before dying was for Aram to become the leader of the family, to have the right to be free. Then we return to the classroom sometime later. The teacher explains that every quarter tests are held and the last placed are expelled from the academy. It's a filter to select the best and force everyone to strive all the time. They are practical and theoretical tests. The protagonist knows that, in practice, there is no risk, but in theory, it could be a big problem for him. The protagonist's idea is as follows. He will cheat on this test, and the responsibility for giving the right answers is Brace's. If he can't do that, his life will become a nightmare. When the class ended, Aram for the first time says something other than teach me fencing. She asks if they will train today as well. The protagonist says that now she is ready to learn fencing. The girl even glows with happiness. Now that we know more about her, we can deduce that her family didn't train her and doesn't really consider her important. In the training room, the first thing the protagonist wants to see is her sword. She draws the sword and they start with the very basics, how to hold the sword correctly. With simple guidance on how to wield the sword, mana naturally flows through the blade, something she didn't even know how to do. The next step is for her to attack with everything she has. Aram begins to emanate lightning and her body's mobility surprises even herself. Even though the protagonist defends easily, she is much faster, and he confirms this. Another lesson is how to concentrate magic on body parts for more speed. The blows are good, but she must also learn to defend. The protagonist also moves a lot, and the exchange of blows between them lasts an hour, with Aram giving her all while Hyeon teaches and gives tips. When the class ends, she can't even stand up. As always, her body is at its limit. However, she can already see the results. She is much stronger than on the day of the opening ceremony, yet she has not been able to reach the protagonist. He is on another level. Before the class ends, she wants a serious duel with Hyeon. For the protagonist, it might be interesting since she is raw talent and fun to train. He thinks that 300 years ago, she would have had the potential to be a disciple of his. She asks again about the duel, and he, to provoke her, says he doesn't want a duel so that she would insist as she always does. However, this time she accepts the answer without protest, which is surprising because she is extremely stubborn. She even says that if he doesn't want it, it's because it's not the best thing to do right now. Aram accepted to follow the words of her master to the minute to become stronger. 2 weeks later, the students are gathered. The senior instructor explains that the bi-monthly test will be an attack on a dungeon. When the entrances appear, he says the recommended number for each group is 8 people, but they are free to form larger or smaller groups. They will have 5 hours to complete their dungeons. Their level is F+. Whoever fails in 5 hours will be expelled. Even those from noble families are nervous, because the rules are absolute, and if they fail they will be expelled for sure. The teacher says the time has started to count, and they must choose their teams and organize quickly so as not to waste valuable time. The confidence of the strongest students is evident. Sui and Makima decides to join a team of 8 people, and another group forms a team of 20 people. Most opt for the advice of 8 people in the group, and the evaluation begins outside with each person's decision on the formation of the groups. Hyeon, who just observed and didn't make friends with anyone, is not called by anyone. Aram, similarly, is alone. Curious about the girl, he asks what she intends to do. Aram states that she will do what the master orders. That doesn't make sense to him. The girl is trying to follow all his words since the last training. Anyway, he just says he will go in alone. Aram then takes this as a goal and decides she will go in alone too. Her master didn't care, because he himself said the dungeon seems very easy, so it's not dangerous. Aram is not good with words and understood this as part of his. Another group saw the beautiful and lonely girl and invited her to join their team, as they are 7 people and she would complete the group. But the stubborn girl refuses the invitation and announces that she will go in alone, and she really goes alone. In everyone's eyes, this is madness, because failing here means certain expulsion, and there she goes into the dungeon alone. In the monitoring room, they can see and control the environment of all the simulated dungeons. Individual and collective performance is worth points, and everyone is evaluated at the same time. The teacher in charge is amazed by the competence of the senior instructor. In the past, he was a legendary contractor with 99% success in his missions. According to Lee Sang-chul, this year's students are great, especially those from noble families. In particular, Soyeon stands out, managing to define the best formation and control her team, in addition to performing various functions that give her more points. The instructor comments that if it weren't for the protagonist defeating her on the first day, her reputation would be impeccable. Anyway, as the tests progress, she should return to the top for being an exemplary student. And speaking of the protagonist, the instructor tries to find out where he is and finds nothing. This is curious, so he wonders if it would be possible for him to have already completed the test in record time, until he checks the list of those who completed the test, and there is the protagonist's name. He finished the test in 23 minutes. This leaves the instructor perplexed. How could a student achieve this time? It would be impossible for him not to try to see the recording immediately. Alone, the student Hyeon showed no fear. With a smile of someone who knows what he's doing, he seemed like a chainsaw slicing through everything ahead. 2 giant goblins tried to attack him, missed, and didn't get another chance. While watching the 23 minutes of terror, the other 2 teachers were also there, impressed. The dungeon boss, programmed to push a group of 8 students to their limit, was defeated with a single stab. Undoubtedly, Hyeon finished in first place, and all the teachers realized that he was not normal. When everyone left the dungeons, they were exhausted and injured. Even the best had marks showing how difficult the test was. Aram was there too, with some cuts on her clothes after completing the test, and Hyeon was the only one as clean as at the start of the test. The final ranking was the protagonist in first, Aram in second, Soyeon in third, the big guy in fourth, and the rest don't matter. The senior instructor expected the protagonist to be first, but not without any injuries. His potential is worthy of the world's best, which is incredible. But a surprise was seeing Aram in second place. They don't understand why she went alone like the protagonist. Her time was longer, and she got injured in the fights, but still managed to complete the challenge alone. The responsible teacher, who was once an executive of the Choijin Guild, knows Aram well. Even though she was exemplary, this behavior doesn't make sense. He suspects that the protagonist is influencing her, but it's just a suspicion. Rockdale, from another class, came to check the neighboring class's ranking just to get angry seeing the protagonist at the top. On the same day, he will meet Desira, who arrived in Korea. The Ventric meeting couldn't be in any place other than a fancy one. Desira, who came from Mexico especially to eliminate the protagonist, eats like an animal, and Rockdale seems afraid of him. Desira asks if he's authorized to eliminate the protagonist. Rockdale replies that the choice is his, but it's only necessary to teach a lesson to the arrogant one who belittled his name. After negotiating how to act, Rockdale is to arrange the scenario in Valhalla for Desira to act, and even his assistant was involved against her will. A week later, the protagonist requests another authorization to leave the Valhalla campus. This was only possible because he did very well in the bi-monthly exam. There is a limit on how many times one can leave the academy per semester. This time he is going to Suwon. He was focused on reaching his destination, and didn't expect someone to be willing to get in his way just out of the whim of arrogant rich people. A man with a crazy look stood in front of the protagonist, and greeted him as if he knew him. The protagonist, polite, asked who he was, but the lunatic insinuated that it didn't matter. The protagonist is no fool. He came here because he was invited by a mysterious person. He knew the goal was to get rid of him, and the man praised his intuition for that. But according to the protagonist, it wasn't intuition. He knew it for days. He literally threw in the man's face that it was predictable, and nothing special. Annoyed, the first attack of the lunatic was filled with rage. Of course, he missed. Even though the attack was strong, the protagonist was calm. This Desira was confident in his strength, and even though the protagonist showed no fear, he recognized that he was strong. His body was fragile, and any attack of that power could destroy him, so he decided to use strategy. The protagonist ran, and the man followed. Unconcerned, the lunatic prepared an attack, but in seconds he was surprised by a counterattack, with the protagonist asking if he had a brain in his head. A blow to the forehead almost cracked the skull. Hyeon attempted another blow to the head but missed. Actually, the protagonist let him dodge to say the same thing Desira said, that he was lucky to dodge. It didn't take long for the arrogant one to feel fear of the monster in front of him. In the past, Desira used all kinds of elixirs to strengthen himself, and that was his talent, high elixir resistance. His parents spent fortunes on this, and by the age of 16, he already had the body and power of an adult. His parents' intention was to use their son to gain recognition for the family, but he didn't accept that. The first people he eliminated were his own parents. After being expelled from the clan, his life was freer, and money wasn't a problem. His real motive for coming to Korea was to find a challenge his age to play with, but now he didn't understand how there was such a monster. It couldn't be natural. Desira asked what elixirs the protagonist used to become so strong. Hyeon laughed at this in front of the enemy, wondering what the hell this guy was talking about. Does anyone do something so trashy like that? Is he a cheater using it to hide his weakness? Desira contained his anger but questioned whether the protagonist didn't also become so strong using that. Of course not. He even said that he could compare Desira to a strong genius at school before. But now he realized it would be an insult to Sihya, who trains so hard every day. After being so insulted as never in his life, Desira decided that even if he wasn't as strong as this guy yet, he could use his incredible tools to defeat him. The protagonist realized that the dagger was a magical item with great destructive power. Desira asked Kim Juhyeok for his last words, but what happened was that these were the last words said by Desira before losing all his teeth. How does someone wait for the enemy to attack while holding such a powerful item? He was thrown against a tree, and to the sadness of Mother Nature, this trash was responsible for the death of an innocent tree. But that wasn't the end. The protagonist declared that before Desira loses consciousness, he would answer some questions. Desira was willing to answer everything now, but Juhyeok shouted that he would only ask questions after he's satisfied first. Rockdale was in his room waiting for news of success, and thinking about how he would cover up the accident that caused Hyeon's death. He says they will celebrate a lot today, and when he receives a call from Desira, he hears only a groan. On the other end of the line, the protagonist made the lunatic groan on the phone to show what happened to him. No! The protagonist even said that Desira asked Rockdale to burn incense in his memory after he dies. Hyeon says that Rockdale will be next now. Rockdale was so terrified that he hung up the phone, leaving the protagonist talking alone. Rude, these rich people. Now that the message was given, Hyeon thinks about what to do with the body. Actually, he didn't die, but he will never want to look even at a picture of the protagonist, let alone face him in person. Yuria, who went to get tea for Rockdale and him to celebrate, was happy when she left, but when she returned, her master was about to explode with rage. Rockdale began to think that if the information about him trying to kill someone at the academy reached his family, it would be terrible. But what could he do now against the guy who defeated the strongest mercenary he knows? His plan now is to wait and see if the protagonist will leak this information or blackmail him for money. In other words, he has no plan and will just hope the protagonist doesn't tell the Ventric family. Hyeok, when leaving the park, was precisely planning the right time to report him for this. His pet constellation suggests that he should have just killed Desira and then Rokdo Ventric too, but the protagonist says that the 300-year-old him would do that. But now he's the 16-year-old student Kim Juhyeok, and he can't go around killing people without causing problems. The current world is different and at peace. Barche also says that the skill Desira used before is familiar to him. Barche doesn't remember where but recalls a magic of that type. He also asks if the protagonist didn't notice his magic, but the protagonist didn't care and told him to shut up. After destroying Desira, the protagonist woke up the mercenary to ask a question. He even had to put his jaw back in place for him to talk. He asked who gave the order to kill the protagonist. protagonist. The mercenary didn't want to talk, but the protagonist used his incredible dialogue skills to convince the guy to reveal all his secrets. Now he finally tells that Rokdo Ventric sent him after him. Exactly that Rokdo Ventric from that day. Another thing is that Desira is not from the academy, where he came from and what his name is. Desira didn't want to reveal his information, but when asked if he wanted more broken fingers, the guy said everything. His name is just Desira now. He is from the first species and works as an independent mercenary. Our protagonist has heard of the first species and questions if he thinks it's cool to be a mercenary because he's just a bully paid for that. Despite the complete defeat, Desira claims that Hyeok is lucky in life. If he had waited 30 more seconds, the fight's outcome would be different. In the end, our hero is not a bad guy. He would even let the guy go, but now he changed his mind. He is better off silent, so please don't ever speak again. Returning to the academy later, the protagonist starts thinking about how to get back at Rokdo Ventric, who is hindering his goal with the system. The protagonist recorded the entire conversation with Desira, and after thinking about how to release it, he calls a crazy professor for an assistant. She answers, asking if he finally decided to be her assistant. He says no, he wants to know if she knows any journalists. The protagonist arranged for the newspaper to publish news about the Ventrics ordering a crime inside the academy. The news and comments on the internet about it are here. With an iPhone 45, the protagonist tarnished the Ventric's reputation, but what he didn't expect was it would affect the family in England. The protagonist didn't even want to affect the whole family, just the guy for committing a crime. The family's leader had to publicly apologize to the student attacked by the family member and declare that Desira was excommunicated from the family. The same Desira claimed that Rokdo Ventric was the mastermind but later changed his testimony and took all the blame. She also said she would personally apologize to the attacked student and take Rokdo Ventric back home for investigation. After this statement, she didn't speak to the press again. Rokdo Ventric, who saw this on the internet, felt his body freeze with fear. His father called to inform him he must return to England immediately. All that was left for Rokdo was his anger and helplessness. Yuria remained silent about all this. The next day, the protagonist found out that Desira declared the Ventrics had no connection. The mercenary was taken to the Ventric family's headquarters. The protagonist didn't like that, but whatever, the important thing is Rokdo is gone. Hyeok went to the teacher's room to thank the professor for helping with a trustworthy journalist, and as always, girls are crazy in this world. Be my assistant. I said no, damn it. The professor pouted, wanting to know why he called her then. Could this be a date? The protagonist wasn't even surprised anymore and told her to return to reality. If he wanted, I think the professor would give him a chance. Now I return to reality. He went there just to thank and give some information he has about monsters and how to deal with them, but in exchange for being excused from classes this weekend again. Meanwhile, on a ship heading to the Tower prison, a certain Desira is aboard as a prisoner. His plan is to remain silent and take all the blame alone not to harm the Ventrics. He is sure they will repay the favor. In less than 5 years, maybe he should be out of prison. Unfortunately for this mercenary, retirement came earlier. Now he won't talk anymore for the rest of his life. At the Ventric mansion, the family leader was there to receive Rokdo and furious about the stain he caused on the family's name. Rokdo's father and son went together to take the scolding. She, just opening her mouth to ask something, made him crap his pants. She just wanted to know what he would do about this. Rokdo says he will beg for her forgiveness, but she doesn't accept just that. The woman seemed about to kill them both right there but didn't. She says that his actions threw the family's name in the mud, all for a silly reason. The terror in the boy's eyes was visible. He even begged and said he would do anything to fix it. The woman then stated that the only way was for Rokdo to be expelled from the family. Rokdo's father tried to help his son against it, claiming that it was too extreme, but the woman was relentless, saying that if he didn't agree, he should accept being expelled instead of his idiot son. Even between father and son, there is a limit because the man refused. However, the woman is very smart, thinking to herself that she wanted the boy expelled now or even dead. Still, if she expelled the boy, it would be admitting that the Ventrics were guilty, so for now, she said she wouldn't expel Rokdo, and they were in her hands, and they should wait for her to think better. Her desire is to meet with Kim Juhyeok and think better about Rokdo's fate. So she ordered the father to keep an eye on his mediocre son from now on, and be grateful for her compassion. Humiliated by the protagonist, he returned home to be even more humiliated by the family leader. Besides, the father also had to do the same, but that didn't happen. Rokdo tells his father that her intention is to expel him as soon as the dust settles, so he will have to do it, and the father will have to help. For his son's sake, the father will support. At least he is a present father and helps his son, even if it's to do shit. Great dad. Meanwhile, at the Valhalla Academy, the protagonist is informed that the Ventric leader is coming to visit him to apologize, and the protagonist doesn't understand why such an important person would do that. It can't be good. The professor is also worried about the situation. Adelia, the Ventric leader, is coming today. They donated millions to the academy. They are the biggest money donors, so the academy will cover up everything. He wants to know if the protagonist understands what that means. Despite being a teenager teenager in everyone's eyes, he is smart enough to know what it means and agrees. Some time passed until the woman arrived. The professor showed respect for someone so important, and soon left, leaving the protagonist and the ventric leader in the room. She introduced herself as someone refined and polite. The protagonist also knows how to behave with formalities. Moreover, the woman didn't understand how someone without a noble family wouldn't feel intimidated by her. As it's a peace mission, she apologizes for the Desira incident, to which the protagonist says it's okay. And now about minoxidil. She was going to talk about him, but the protagonist interrupts her to say it doesn't matter anymore. In the media interviews, she said he had nothing to do with it, so there's no reason to feel guilty. Now the true faces start to appear. She throws on the table that the media and public don't believe the Ventrix. What Adelia wants is the protagonist's help to change the public's opinion about her family. She practically offers everything in return: money, political support for him to enter the best guilds in Korea, and he just needs to help this time with this. To be sure, the protagonist asks if all he needs to do is make a statement, and everything ends. This question was asked just to be sure of the woman's intentions. After the confirmation, he throws in her face that they must be desperate to offer so much to shut him up. They even crossed the continent to see him personally. Hyeok immediately tells her the truth. He is irritated that they are trying to act like it was nothing and says he doesn't want to help with that. He states he doesn't need any of what she offered. The best reward is seeing this family live with the dishonor Rockdale brought to them marked in history. The woman went crazy and wanted to kill the protagonist right there. But he doesn't bow to anyone. A boy without a noble family proves and says she doesn't have the courage to do what she wants here. She shows her true face, saying he is trash, making her waste time with arrogant trash without an aim. Adelia threatens that she will kill him now with all her power. The protagonist shows no sign of fear, confidently telling her to try her luck. He is smart, and throws in her face that if the Ventrix said Rockdale was not guilty, threw a lot of money and offers to cover this trail. Killing him here is the last thing she would have the courage to do. The woman, exploding with anger, couldn't disagree with this statement. In the end, he was right, and Adelia gives up and threatens, saying he will regret today. The protagonist further insults her dignity by saying that all the Ventrix talk so much shit, it must be a family thing. Even Barche, who lives in his sword, asks if it was necessary to make such an enemy. For the protagonist, these people who think they should be revered are the ones he hates the most. This was the same reason he hated Barche 300 years ago. Because of this threat, the protagonist promises to go after these people who tried to put a collar on him in this era too. After this declaration of war, he goes to the academy's training stadium, and there at the door, look who we find. Choi Aram is facing her older brother, whom the protagonist doesn't know yet. The guy was at the academy, which he isn't even a student of, to oppress her and force her not to challenge him for the family leadership. His argument is that he doesn't want to destroy the girl in front of everyone, and that she has no chance of surviving if she faces him. Aram refuses to give up but doesn't have enough courage to face him. However, someone calls her brother a talentless shit. Someone he doesn't even know insulting him like that. Perhaps it was a powerful noble to have that courage. The big brother who doesn't know the protagonist wants to know why he is suddenly insulting him. The only reason is to see another arrogant noble bragging about his family's position. That's why the protagonist expels the guy from the academy, also saying that anyone invading the academy to demand something from a student is wrong. He asks if Aram agrees, and she says yes, her cuteness blinding all of us. In that case, the brother threatens that they will settle things during the test and leaves. Aram thanks her master for his help, but to him, it was nothing, and now they should go train. But she has a complaint, saying she agreed when he asked, but she was planning to say something else. He got curious about what she wanted to say, but to avoid any issues with this video, I can't mention it in words here. A few days later, the protagonist went out in search of his old notes, which contained teachings on how to overcome the weaknesses of this body, so he can destroy a certain arrogant noble family. Meanwhile, the day for selecting the new leader of the Choi Jin family arrives. Being an important family, there are several reporters there to find out who the new leader will be. Inside, the fencing-obsessed girl and her despicable brother were ready for the test. Their father was about to start the test but first had to perform all the rituals and procedures, asking if everyone knew what was at stake and the importance of their family. The loser would be banished from the family, and the winner would become the future leader. Both said they were aware and prepared for this, so their father revealed the test. It was to find the dual blade hidden in the mountains. Whoever found the sword and brought it to him would be recognized as the winner of the selection test. It didn't matter how they obtained the sword, as long as they didn't kill each other, and so the test began. Aram eagerly ran to find the sword first, while her brother didn't even run, thinking that if he let her find the sword, he could just take it from her and win. Going back a few days to the day the protagonist humiliated her brother, he received a call from someone pressuring him to get the dual blade quickly and deliver it to them. Someone outside the clan had arranged for him to steal the sacred sword of his clan in exchange for a contract with a more powerful constellation. constellation. Aram, who was ahead, was using a technique to sense the energy of the environment to pick up the sword's trail. It would take her about 15 minutes to detect the sword's trail, which was too long, giving her brother time to find her before she could. He questioned who taught her to track magical traces in the environment. Aram revealed it was her master. In the fencing lessons, he taught her magical control beyond the basics she already knew, and in these lessons, the protagonist wondered why the family didn't teach her anything, but from her expression, he understood more or less why. Setting that aside, he showed her how to better control the magical energy throughout her body, mastering her total energy so she could sense the magic in the surrounding environment too. On the first try, she managed to sense the mana around her and the object with the most mana nearby. With that, she could even sense the slightest magical energy nearby and avoid wasting her own mana as she improved her control. Magical objects emit energy too. The more control you have, the easier it is to track people and objects around you. With each lesson, she became more impressed and perhaps had feelings beyond gratitude. The brother remembered this so-called master, just a mere academy student who insulted him the other day. He insulted the protagonist, claiming that the boy was just a nameless and weak piece of trash. Insulting the first person who dedicated himself to training her in life couldn't be tolerated. Aram replied that that guy was much stronger than them and shouldn't be disrespected. Besides, if the challenge was to find the sword, why did he come to her? The despicable brother responded with his actions, attacking the girl. Before, she could never block his attacks, but this time he saw that things were different. She blocked and threw her brother back. He never expected such a big change and couldn't stop thinking about how it was possible. While the conflict was happening a few days before, Hyuk had gone out to search for his old notes he hid 300 years ago in his previous life. He was scouring various places around the mountains of the city when he finally found what he was looking for. However, far away, he sensed the great use of mana, which revealed itself to be a frantic exchange of sword blows between two siblings. Aram was fully focused on the fight, using all her acquired knowledge. Her brother's first comment was that she seemed stronger than before due to her increased physical strength. "Were you going to school or the gym, little sister?" Her brother attacked, insulting her by calling her a bastard. One of the techniques Aram learned was put into practice. She concentrated her mana on the blade. When the attack came, she spun the sword and made an upward slash. Her brother fell like an NPC, and she followed up with a second blow, hitting his kidneys with all her strength using the sword's hilt. Previously, Aram never stood a chance against her older brother, but now she had surpassed him. "I didn't understand, but she said this is the family's dual blade." Aram realized that her brother was getting up, emanating a completely different aura. He insisted that someone like her would never beat someone like him, who had a contract. He still claimed that the blow was a lucky hit. The girl was curious and asked if he had become a villain due to the strange aura. Aram asked if he was a villain now since the aura seemed evil. He responded that he would show through actions. She prepared to counterattack, but he dodged and made a direct hit. She fell, and what should have been red appeared black. He became confident again and asked if she could get up, but she had no strength left. The older brother admitted that he now belonged to the devotees, which according to Aram, were the third most powerful evil group in the world. Her brother was using the power of one of the devotees' constellation. Things became even more complicated, and Aram questioned why he would join a criminal group and how they could offer more advantage than their rich family. Her brother replied that one of the constellation's powers was to no longer feel emotions. He revealed that since he was 12 years old, he worked for the guild to be an example, but in truth, he just wanted to play and be a normal kid. He joined the devotees to satisfy adolescent desires denied by the guild's obligations. When the devotees' leader found him, he didn't hesitate to accept, knowing his true nature, which included a sadistic side of enjoying breaking people. To officially join the devotees, he needed to deliver the dual blade, a family relic. 10 years ago, during a similar test, he killed his older sister in the mountains, something Aram believed was just a disappearance. He revealed that their mother fell ill with sadness seeing her older sister's face in Aram. He then challenged Aram to find her sister in the other world and cut off her scalp. Actually, that didn't happen. Near the test mountain, the protagonist was searching for something and sensed that a fight was happening. Hyuk's sword blocked the blow, saving Aram at the last moment. "Teach me fencing?" The protagonist demanded he explain what he was doing with Aram. The brother replied that it was a family matter and told him to mind his own business. This made the hero furious. To teach a lesson, he landed a direct hit and threw the guy against a tree. When she recovered, Aram asked why he was there. The protagonist didn't reveal what he was actually doing and said he had business in the middle of the forest while checking her injury. He told her to gather mana and concentrate on healing the wound quickly. He would handle the situation now. The arrogant brother got up and went to him, speaking again that it was a family matter, then attacking by concentrating energy on the sword. The protagonist took a single step to the side to dodge the attack. He was sure he wouldn't miss at that distance, but now he was hit again by a powerful attack. To finish the combo, he stepped on the guy and placed the sword sheath over him, delivering another powerful attack that destroyed everything around. Right after, he went to see if Aram was okay and asked if she could at least walk. Before that, the brother emitted an even more intense dark aura and got up again. He muttered something and jumped at the protagonist, whether he was going to kick his head or strike with a sword. The protagonist defended effortlessly, and the guy realized it. What he also saw was a punch coming straight to his stomach, questioning if such strength was possible for someone his age. All the attacks were blocked effortlessly, and if he took 1 or 2 more hits, he would lose, so the villain decided to use that. He pulled out a stone, a fragment of an artificial relic, a copy of a real relic. By consuming it, he could form a temporary contract with a higher rank constellation. Even people outside the forest waiting for the test result could feel and see it too. That purple smoke in the sky, the family leader noticed it too and decided to interrupt the test. The older brother was overflowing with corrupt magic, but the protagonist asked if that was all. The brother mocked, saying that confidence would make him die faster. The constellation he contracted with was called the dragon that kills all, and the dragon showed its teeth in satisfaction of being summoned. The dragon that kills much activated its ability to skin everything. The dragon that kills all saw what it had to kill and almost died of fear. It even closed its eyes and wished it was a dream. It opened its eyes again and analyzed again, confirming the nightmare was real. The dragon that kills all told the boy it would retire now, cancelled the contract, and fled. The protagonist then asked what the older brother had said before. Now, without any reinforcement in his body, this last attack took the soul out of his body. The third hit is the lucky one. The devotee's leader received the message. The dragon that kills all got into big trouble because of him. Do you want to disappear from this world? The devotee's leader didn't know why, but if he didn't beg now, he would die, so he begged for forgiveness. The dragon warned him not to distribute artificial relics anymore and to behave from now on. Look at the villain's mindset. After being forgiven, he realized it must have been the boy from the Chojin clan, so he decided to investigate what happened. That is, he would chase what terrified a constellation. Hyeok returned home and took out of his backpack what he had been intensely searching for. He managed to recover his notes on divine arts, a breathing technique that can increase magical power to an impressive level. Talking to Barche, Hyeok commented that the technique he used in his past life was inferior. When he found this manuscript, he couldn't learn it because his body was too accustomed to the technique he used all his life. He mentioned that if he had this technique before, he wouldn't have died then or been injured in that fight. Now, with his new body completely reset, Hyeok would become incredibly powerful. He decided to stop training physically and focus on this new technique. The previous incident, where he almost killed Aram's brother but decided not to go all the way to avoid problems. He checked if Aram was okay and let her decide what to do with her brother. During that time, he noticed someone approaching, probably their father. Hyeok warned Aram that her family was coming and suggested she claimed to have defeated her brother, who was using an evil relic. Before the family arrived, Hyeok left and took the notes. The event severely damaged the Chojin family's reputation, as journalists present in front of the mountain reported on the family's involvement with the devotees, which could significantly impact the family, especially now that Aram was about to be named the next family leader. Aram went to the hospital, but was not in life-threatening condition. She was portrayed as a heroine in the reports for defeating a member of the devotees despite being just a teenager. She followed Hyeok's advice and told her family that she had defeated her brother after discovering his association with the devotees. When asked how she had enough power for that, she attributed her success to Hyeok, who had been teaching her. Researching Hyeok, her father saw that he was a delinquent, making him think his daughter was under bad influence. Sometime later, at the Valhalla Academy, the protagonist arrived in the classroom and noticed that Choi Aram had been discharged from the hospital and was back in classes. The girl seemed to sense his gaze or something because she turned to greet her master. She is a beautiful girl, and 2 guys walking behind the protagonist thought she was waving at them. Does she want my body? During the days following the fight in the forest, the protagonist trained his new technique constantly. Choi Aram informed him over the phone that she couldn't train due to the doctor's orders. A few days ago, our protagonist mentioned that he would take care of some personal matters in the coming days. Since he needed some time alone, Aram was not sad about staying in the hospital, and whenever she texts, her excitement is 10 times greater than in person. I bet many of you are like that too. Stop it, girl. The protagonist also remembers that Barche warned that the dark magic they saw earlier was familiar. However, there is something strange about it. He is sure it is familiar, but he can't remember it, as if something is preventing him from having memories about the dark magic. They are not sure, but they feel that the reason for this is the mysterious person who gave Barche possession of the Tower of the End in the past. If the protagonist can fulfill the system's second condition, things may become clearer. The system warned that he must take the sword in which Barche is sealed. In short, he has to go to this place at the academy, and the only way to infiltrate is during the academy's final exams at the end of the year. If he doesn't attend school or causes problems, he will be expelled. So, it's because of this that the protagonist has to work hard in school to pass. Finally, the class begins. The teacher arrives in the classroom and announces that there will be a big announcement now. They must be aware of the interschool competition that will take place next month. Just thinking about having to participate in a competition irritates Juhyeok. Before the teacher said that the school would select the best students to participate, he already knew he would be selected because of his grades. Strangely, the teacher called the student to a private room before making the announcement. The teacher commented that they have been coming here to talk privately a lot lately. This is strange. It's obviously because you keep calling me here. The teacher knows this is true, but he judged it was important to talk to him first. Before he continued speaking, the protagonist said he refused. The teacher hadn't even said what it was about, but Juhyeok already knew it was about this interschool competition. He is as smart as ever, but the teacher insists on explaining something specifically to him. There are 3 major hunter training institutions worldwide: Valhalla in Korea, White Lotus in China, and Heroes in the USA. Each of these 3 selects their first-year students to participate in the competition representing them. The competition involves fights, escaping from labyrinths, and other challenges. Obviously, they planned to send the first-year students with the best grades. All this was nonsense. It was more than obvious to the protagonist, so he was almost asleep. The teacher couldn't understand how a student wouldn't be interested in doing something so important. Regardless of the teacher's arguments, the protagonist said he wasn't interested in any reward. The teacher couldn't understand what was wrong with this kid, but then he argued that it was really important for the protagonist to go to the center of the Great Forest. He knows this because the protagonist previously asked for permission to go to this place and was denied. However, now he reveals that the interschool competition location would be held in Valhalla, and the final test is in the Great Forest. So, those who participate will go to the Great Forest and won't have to take the academy's final exams because the competition grades will replace them. The smart teacher spoke to him privately because he knew he would refuse in the classroom, so he had to convince him first. Now that he has a chance to reach his goal sooner, the protagonist agrees to participate in the competition. It is not important to return to the classroom to announce who else will participate. We already know who they are. Now we are shown the Ventric property. Adelia, the family head, could not make a commoner like the protagonist's Bao, returned to England, and is preparing for something secret. It is something important that will take up to a month to complete, so she asks him to report concluding it as soon as possible. Additionally, she is curious about the events in Valhalla. The man reports that something curious is happening in Valhalla. It seems that the market is building a large building made of paper money. If even she didn't understand what that meant, then I don't care. All they know is that the one responsible is the Black Cat. The woman has no idea about the Black Cat's motivations, but the constellation she serves asks to speak with her. The constellation wants more details about this. The constellation's interest surprises Adelia. This is not common. We are also shown the market in the 7th territory. The Black Cat also doesn't know the purpose of his constellation in making these buildings, and for the first time, we see the appearance of a constellation. The woman just says it is a gift for him. Something tells me this girl would like to give more than buildings to this person who has caught her interest. The sneaky constellation's name is the Two-Faced Ruler. The Black Cat is her servant, and doesn't know who would be worthy of a gift from his master. Is the deity he worships indebted to someone? The ruler questions if the cat has located the person who sold the ring. The cat hasn't yet. The only information the seller provided was that his voice was young. The constellation could no longer wait. Explanations were not enough. She needed it to be faster. The cat had never seen his master acting this way. Then we returned to Valhalla. The teacher had a difficult day. It is very complicated dealing with these nobles. The chief instructor asked if he had already chosen the students who would represent the academy in the competition. The teacher made the list. Here they are. To the chief instructor's surprise, the first name was not from an important family. This Kim Juhyeok is surprising. The teacher reveals that initially, the student didn't want to participate, but when he mentioned that the competition would take place in the center of the Great Forest, he changed his mind. The chief instructor says this is even stranger. Most people would hesitate after hearing that, not the opposite. Does this kid not know what the center of the Great Forest is? He sleeps in all the classes, so it would make sense. But that also wouldn't make him interested in this place. In this scenario, the chief instructor suggests that the teacher train them. So, a few days later, the 5 selected first-year students were gathered: Juhyeok, Makema, Teach Me Fencing, Random Extra, and Juhyeok Kim. With everyone gathered, the instructor went to see the students. Even though everyone should already know who he is, he introduces himself again, saying it is a pleasure to meet them all. The reason they are gathered here is due to the competition, and he will explain how the special training they will undergo will be. There will be a total of 3 tests they will have to complete. The first is a fight between students. For the test they took to enter the academy, we will see again what you can can do. The second test is a group fight. The 5 students from one academy will face 5 from another academy. The important thing about this test is that it won't be one-on-one. All 5 will fight simultaneously. And finally, the third test involves the center of the Great Forest. Just mentioning this name makes our protagonist pay more attention. Thanks to this competition, as it replaces their final exams at the academy, they will have plenty of time to prepare, so no need to rush. The instructor explains that the center of the Great Forest is a labyrinth. It is different from a normal forest, so it is isolated by a gate and guards at all times. Due to this, it is secret what exists inside, so they cannot know anything except that the task they will receive will be given only on the day of the test. From now on, they will be trained to handle the first and second tests. While the teacher was talking about various important things, our protagonist was not paying attention to anything. All he could think about was the center of the Great Forest. As he saw before, there is a security barrier that prevents him from entering. Unfortunately, he is not strong enough to invade and will have to follow the rules to gain access to the place. Guys, do you think this place is extremely protected? This author is joking with us. While the teacher was still explaining other things, our protagonist said he had a question. He wanted to know if he could train alone. The instructor accepted his request to train for the competition. However, something unexpected happened. Choi Aram also asked to train alone. This raised more doubts for the instructor. Are these two secretly dating? Since he accepted the protagonist's request, he did the same for Aram. The instructor also asked if anyone else wanted to do the same. None of the others said anything, so he will meet them during the training. After the meeting, everyone left the room except for 2 people. Juhyeok was wondering if he would master his new technique by the competition. Even though he is the legendary hero of the past, this body belonged to a careless failure. Aram stayed in the room just to ask her master if she should participate in the training too. To him, it didn't make sense for her to ask him about this, but he answered that she shouldn't push herself too hard due to her injuries, and that really worries the girl. The teacher, before choosing her to participate in the competition, asked if she was in good shape for it. Participating in the competition is very important for any student, but the only thing she wanted to know was if Juhyeok would participate. The teacher also can't predict this girl's thoughts. He told her that the protagonist would participate too, and that's why she agreed to participate as well. The teacher expected her to refuse because her body was not fully recovered. However, the girl insisted that she was fine and would recover in time. Given her determination, he allowed her to participate. Aram has already managed to enter the path to becoming the head of her family, but now the girl feels she wants something else too. The desire in her heart now is to become as strong as him to help him achieve his goals too. Do you guys know she just admitted to herself that she is in love with this guy? While she was thinking about all this, the girl kept looking at him and smiling without saying anything. Of course, the protagonist found it strange and suggested that since she couldn't train her body, she should focus on mana control. After he finishes his own work, he will return to help her personally. That same night, we are shown an abandoned building. Someone was screaming for property. Stop pulling my teeth, I'll give you and tell you everything you want. Unfortunately, they weren't looking for information, just carrying out a simple job of eliminating a target. The woman wanted to finish this quickly, but the bald man didn't find it fun to be quick with these things. These people are professional assassins, and now that they have completed this mission, they will execute the next one. This new mission is very different from the usual because the target is simply a student from Valhalla. The information is that the client paid a lot of money, and the deadline to eliminate this target is 1 month, and it has to be during the inter-school competition. The bald man even questions why he can't kill him now. The woman said it's because security is too strong. Invading the academy and breaking the barrier is too risky. They must execute the plan when the academy is open to the public, and they can hide in the crowd. The girl says that the third test will be held in the center of the Great Forest, a mysterious labyrinth created from the very forest it resides in. The information is that the final test will be to escape that labyrinth, and there will be no instructors around. This will be the moment they will act. So, without further ado, we skip forward a month in time to the first day of the interschool competition. All the students are watching their classmates compete. Rockdale returned to the academy after Desira confessed to being solely responsible for the attack. All Rockdale has to do is wait for those people to do their job. The son called his father and confirmed that he had contacted that pair of professionals, the best and most expensive assassins, and they would do the dirty work this time. Rockdale did all this without his father having any connection to him. If something goes wrong, the boy will take full responsibility. But Rockdale assures his father that there will be no mistakes this time because the Samsao group will handle it. Even the boy's father knows who these people are. It's the group those two weirdos are part of. If this is necessary to rebuild the son's reputation, the father asks Rockdale not to do anything risky now. The assassins confirmed they accepted the job, so Rockdale is eager to have his revenge against that commoner. The president of the Valhalla Council announces the start of the competition. Shim Dyakwon introduces the students from China, the White Lotus. The heroes from the United United States, and finally, the representatives of South Korea, Valhalla. The competition will last for 3 days. Today's task is an individual duel between the students, he announces. After passing on the information and holding the ceremony, he asks everyone to return to the waiting room. The chief instructor is eager to see the results of the new generation. Moreover, he was also eagerly waiting for this guy, the senior instructor of the heroes, Jack Rover. The two already know each other, and our senior instructor jokes with his friend, calling him Mr. Third Place. Jack reminds him that Valhalla didn't come in first that time either, but now it will be different. This year the heroes will definitely come in first place. The Americans' confidence was high, the reason being the pinnacle of all contractors, the only one. Senkyo mentions that this is the guy called Logan, the Destroyer. To our instructor's surprise, this guy's son is at the academy and will represent the United States. The genius boy is right there, Logan Jr. From his appearance, our instructor recognizes that he seems very competent and is eager to see him in combat. Jack mentions that the boy made a contract with the same constellation as his father. Despite this, Jack also heard that Valhalla has incredible talents this year, especially that boy Kim Juhyeok. He was quite excited about the fight between the boys, but our instructor was no longer interested. He only mentioned that soon he would understand why he didn't have high expectations. And to our delight, the first fight announced was between Valhalla and the heroes. The two boys were selected for the first match. The president announces that the rules are simple, they just can't kill each other. The security system prevents fatal damage. So, the hits landed in this arena will be transformed into pain by electrical impulses. In other words, feel free to go all out, because here you don't need to hold back. After the countdown, they can begin. Our protagonist was calm. He didn't need to overdo it. 3, 2, and 1, Juhyeok quickly approached and struck. To his surprise, until today, no one had ever blocked any of his blows, but it just happened. Who is this guy? He is strong. Logan asks if the protagonist thinks he is strong with such an attack. Juhyeok said he still has a long way to go. Really? He said that the protagonist is more modest than he thought. For a moment, we believed that the opponent was strong, but it's not quite like that. Juhyeok asks if he can withstand his blows over time and spins the boy in the air. Then he lands a precise blow to the nipples. This time, Logan acknowledged that this blow was heavy, and our protagonist recognized that the opponent is quite tough. The two instructors were watching the fight. Senkyo states that Logan is quite tough for withstanding a blow from the protagonist. Jack saw all the videos of this boy and trained the students. Juhyeok wasn't supposed to be this scary, but it is still too early to give up. Logan hasn't used destruction yet, and now he attacks using magical energy. With this kind of power, our protagonist has to dodge. He feels that this energy is dangerous. Despite having destructive power, he doesn't have the same level of fighting skill. His hair was cut. Juhyeok is sure that this boy Logan would be a great hairdresser. Logan realized that if he can't land his blows, there is no reason to use destruction. In fact, he doesn't have to use it conventionally. He places his hands on the ground and channels his energy through the stadium. Using his power, he can distract the opponent by raising pieces of the arena. If the opponent can't locate him among the debris, he won't be able to dodge the attacks. This is the expectation of an inexperienced boy. However, Juhyeok easily saw his movements and was able to dodge and even throw a piece of rock at his opponent's face. The protagonist uses this moment to tell the boy that if he is hiding, it becomes easy to find him. If he is using magic, he can simply sense the energy. Why not try throwing a punch like this, without magic, and hit the opponent's nose? With just one more precise blow, the victory went to the Korean team. Senkyo was confident in this result, but Jack was stunned. That boy is a monster. The next duels took place, and all the enemies were easily defeated. When there were no more enemy opponents to face, Valhalla had to face their own team in the final round. And to fill the protagonist with pride, Choi Aram was the finalist. The girl also talked about this. Valhalla's victory is guaranteed, so there is no reason for them to fight with full strength. However, it is the winner who will receive a scholarship, and she doesn't need the money, so if Juhyeok wants, she can forfeit. Juhyeok replies that he also doesn't care about the money, but still, Aram can't forfeit. He also wanted her to show how much she had improved, so he asked her to give her best in the fight. Without hesitation, the girl prepared to attack with her thunderous sword. Before, her skill was already something incredible. Now, her control was on another level. The fight between these two monsters shocked the entire arena. Even the senior instructors couldn't believe what they were watching. This was a high-level battle. The victory went to the protagonist, and Barche spoke in his mind that he is very cruel, and if he had hurt her, Juhyeok held back. He says he didn't hit her abdomen. The girl changed the trajectory of the attack at the last moment, and he also did it to hit the sword. However, his power is so different that the result of hitting the sword was something like this. Despite his monstrous growing strength, Choi Aram is also incredible and surpasses all other students. The first day of the competition ended, and during the night, Senkyo congratulated the team. They were incredible and won the first day. Everyone Everyone wasn't hurt due to the defense system, but they should still rest and visit the infirmary. He was also going to mention something about the formation to use tomorrow. However, Juhyeok began to doubt if he really needed to wait longer to go to the center of the great forest. Maybe his strength was enough not to have to follow the rules. The meeting ended, and Sankyo left the boys alone, but Juhyeok wanted to talk to the instructor first. He had a question. If he managed to defeat everyone and finish the test in record time tomorrow, could they do the third test on the same day? At this point, he didn't even question if it was possible, and just said he would look in the rule book. He investigated and discovered that there are exceptions for this to happen. If the test was done very quickly and the preparations for the next test were already ready, they could be done immediately. In other words, the protagonist says he will finish quickly, so he asks the instructor to have everything prepared for him to take the final test on the same day. The man didn't even question if it was possible. He says he will do it that way. So, in that case, the protagonist will hear tomorrow. They say goodbye, and our hero is impatient and hates following rules. And then he quickly discussed with his pet sword. Do you want me to finish you off too? Our hero is completely anxious and can't wait another day to follow the system's orders and get more answers. The next day, the sun rises. The weather is great for the second day of competition. The academy president says again, "It is a pleasure to have everyone here for this beautiful day. The group battle will take place in the forest, and everyone will watch everything through ultra-modern drone cameras." This is the new favorite team to win the competition, but Juhyeok wasn't with the group. Makima asked her colleagues if anyone knew the whereabouts of that boy. At that moment, the latecomer joins the team and apologizes for being late. Although he is the strongest in the school, he can still get scolded for it. The instructor was clear when he said everyone should be here 30 minutes early. Didn't he forget? It's not that he forgot, he just wasn't paying attention. The protagonist stated that he would take care of everything, so there was no need to come up with a strategy. They know he is strong, but the test is a group battle now. Makima questioned if he thinks he can face all 10 enemy students at once. None of the boys wanted to interfere in this discussion. Only a girl would have the courage to face this guy. Aram then intervened. She wanted to go with Juhyeok too. His response is no, they all must wait here now. Although Makima didn't understand the boy's intentions, she tried until the end to change his mind. Then, when the countdown to start the test began, 3, 2, 1, the White Lotus team was ready to recover the points lost yesterday. Within seconds of starting the test, they were located and couldn't even prepare a defense. Juhyeok even acknowledged that they are good because they reacted quickly. White Lotus has been eliminated. Logan is the leader of his team and thought that Valhalla focused on the White Lotus team so they wouldn't have a chance to join forces against them. That guy is very strong and also very smart. The boy on the team detected magic coming towards them at high speed. No, it's a person at high speed. They know it's the bogeyman coming after them, so they prepared a reinforced magic shield. Melissa would prepare the most powerful reinforcement magic she could. Bella is responsible for defense and will support the barrier. With everyone focused on defense, Logan will be ready for the attack. This is a formation entirely focused on defense, so Melissa questioned why all this if it's just one person. Logan stated that this person is Juhyeok. She must have seen in the first test that he is different from everyone else. Bella said that Melissa didn't fight him yesterday, so she has no idea how strong that blow to the chest is. Melissa was sure there was no one stronger than Logan, but Logan himself admits that he doesn't compare to that guy. They waited for some time, and the enemy's mana disappeared. Despite this, they maintained the formation for longer. The boys on the team seemed duplicated. While they waited, the monster appeared on top of the trees. Logan's rear felt chills. Before he could look in the direction of the enemy, his vision was already blocked by a sword. Juhyeok infiltrated their formation from above and defeated the only DPS. Bella didn't have a chance to use her shield, and Melissa didn't fight him before, but now she can defeat him. But first, she needs to land a hit. She experienced what everyone went through yesterday, a blow to the stomach. The two boys from before had the advantage of attacking the opponent from behind but lost with just one blow. With 4 attacks, Juhyeok defeated the 5 opponents from the American Academy. The heroes have been eliminated. The protagonist could no longer wait to go to the forest. But before that, can you tell me where this boy is looking?
Yeah, boy.
The fastest test in history has just been completed. In the monitoring room, the academy president asked the others if the clock was correct. Juhyeok finished the test alone in 23 minutes. They all agreed, so the president was going to end the second day of tests right then. But the senior instructor Sankyo mentioned that the rules allow the third test to be done today if the second test is completed very quickly. The president understands what he means and authorizes them to discuss if this is possible. That Juhyeok is indeed a demon and did what he said. Jack agreed with Sankyo to bring the third test forward, but they still needed the approval of the White Lotus instructor. According to Jack, after watching the first and second days, he had no doubt that the result would change. Valhalla has a terrifying monster this year. He also understands why Sankyeol didn't doubt that Juhyeok could lose. In the restroom, the Valhalla team was there, but they weren't tired because they didn't even lift a finger for this victory. Makima couldn't stop thinking that this guy is a monster. He is totally insane. She was going to try to take the lead in this test and couldn't. Yesterday, she was defeated by Choi Aram in combat. There are rumors that she is being trained by Juhyeok. The girl feels that at this rate, she is falling far behind, and it is distressing. So she wonders if she could set aside her pride. Would he teach her too? The seductive atmosphere was broken when they announced over the school's sound system that the test for tomorrow, survival in the labyrinth, had been brought forward. Before everyone went to the forest, the protagonist said he had an announcement to make to everyone. He will go alone to the center of the forest. So, they are all on their own. If they have problems, they can call him, and he will help. Makima was once again irritated. Another solo move. They already won the previous 2 tests, so they will pass anyway in this test. But why does this boy insist on doing everything alone? She wanted to say something to him, but she couldn't. Juhyeok then asked if the little bird wasn't going to say what she wanted. Why do you keep giving me nicknames? You are confirming the nickname. I wanted a nickname too. Teach me fence. After a while, everyone went to the gate to the Great Forest. The president then announced to everyone that the final test of the competition would begin. Once again, everyone would watch through the magical screen in the stadium. In the center of this place, there is a labyrinth unlike any other in the world. A dense forest where the rain never stops falling. Dangers threaten at all times. The content of this test is as follows. All participants will be evaluated at the beginning of the test, after 5 hours, inside this forest. The closer the students are to their current state before entering, the higher the grade they will receive. Group combat is prohibited, so let the test begin. Now that the final test has been announced, those 2 crazies are lurking in the abandoned warehouse at the academy. They were waiting for the 3rd day to do their job and just found out that the test was brought forward. A woman came to inform the 2 so they would also bring forward the job they have to do. They are teleported from where they are, and immediately the camera system in the control room is interrupted. The instructors have no idea what kind of failure could cause all the cameras in the forest to fail simultaneously. Did I forget to pay the internet? You call the provider and the gate security. The instructors agree that the students could get into trouble in there, so the instructors will enter to end the test. When they went to the gate, all they found were the ruins of what used to be a gate. Inside the forest, they were fighting against the rain, waiting for time to pass. Melissa said that Bella wasn't doing very well, but the girl didn't want to hinder the team, saying she got too wet in the rain. Logan, as a good leader, couldn't ignore the signs and ordered them to build a shelter to get out of the rain. With his power, he can make a cave in the ground. Something unexpected appears in front of him, a black and purple orb, then 3 people emerge from it. The bald man, with a scary look, says Juhyeok should accept and die quickly. Their boss or something like that says that this is not the target. Their teleport identified the wrong target. Logan heard very well the bald man's words. They want to kill Juhyeok. So who are these people using dark magic? The girl tells the bald man to hurry and not leave any witnesses. They will have to face the genius of the Heroes Academy for that. This competition is no place for worms using dark magic. Logan tried to attack the target in front of him and was stabbed in the back. The bald man's power can do something like that. So cowardly. This guy really did it. He did it to someone as important as me. When did he get behind me? The bald man then told him to look back and understand better. Logan realized that this guy mastered the shadow clone jutsu and was cruel. He received a fatal blow and fell. The sound of his fall was heavy, and the 2 girls asked if he died instantly. But that wasn't the case. He would bleed out to death. These people were used to this, but Bella had never seen someone close to dying. The D1 girl ordered the bald man to hurry up and eliminate the witnesses. They had to hunt down the target before anyone interfered. While they were attacking the survivors, our protagonist was running through the forest. The system ordered him to go to the center of the Great Forest, but he didn't believe there was anything in this place besides trees. Along the way, he noticed the presence of the American students. The blonde girl was standing and seemed to be the last survivor of the group. The bald man had eliminated them all and noticed that another witness had appeared. However, the man saw that his prey had come to them on its own, a lucky day. Melissa also noticed Juhyeok and heard that these people were after him, but they were caught by mistake. The pair of executioners celebrated the fact that the prey came to them. Even knowing he was a target, Juhyeok was calm and had a cold look. Seeing these innocent people on the ground was something he couldn't ignore. He asked the blonde girl to take care of the fallen friends and stop the bleeding. Perhaps they could be saved. Juhyeok noticed they were hit in a non-fatal way, just to bleed slowly. These criminals are savage. Before they started fighting, he asked some questions. What was their goal with all this? The bald man said the brat was spoiled, thinking he could ask questions. The entrance was destroyed. All observation drones were destroyed. No teacher would arrive in time to save them. The bald man estimated it would take at least an hour to get through the destroyed gate. This was to scare the boy, but Juhyeok thought the forest was huge and the rain incessant. What if he didn't find his goal after solving this problem? What would the bald man think of a boy saying he would solve this and then do something else? The bald man attacked in 2 directions to eliminate the target. It would be impossible for anyone to dodge both attacks. But the impossible happened. He hit the ground. Where was that boy? Juhyeok called out. This way, and then said they were in big trouble now. The blow was so strong that the bald man flew meters until he hit a tree. The 2 criminals didn't have time to process the information. They were hit from behind and immediately lost consciousness, falling like sacks of potatoes to the ground next to the bald man. Juhyeok ordered the blonde girl to use her healing magic on her friend's wounds. If she couldn't handle it alone, she could run west until she found the Valhalla students who would help. The rain hid her tears, but she was determined to heal her friends as quickly as possible. The bald man woke up quickly and saw his partners beside him. When he looked ahead, his target was staring at him. He had another chance to complete the mission and flee with the sacks of potatoes. Juhyeok, on the other hand, said that before killing, he needed the bald man to explain one thing. Who ordered his head? Despite being a criminal, the bald man asked what kind of assassin he would be if he revealed the client's identity. Juhyeok was impatient. Usually, guys spill the beans when they know they have no chance of survival. The bald man blacked out for a few seconds but now regained his senses. He would take it seriously and finish off this boy now. His clone was behind Juhyeok, ready to deliver the fatal blow. Even without vision, Juhyeok perfectly dodged the attack. How did he do that? Juhyeok said the guy was a coward, attacking from behind. He destroyed the clone and asked if he wanted a surprise attack that wasn't cowardly. Take this broken nose. The man was hit, and it was clear that the roles of prey and hunter had reversed. Juhyeok asked again, for the last time, what the client's name was. The man insisted it was impossible to lose to a kid. In that case, Juhyeok started hitting until he gave in. The attack was so powerful that trees were torn apart like paper. After some time, the instructors managed to reach the group of students. They followed the noise and found the American group along with the Korean one. The Americans were in bad shape. Jack was very worried and wanted to know what happened. Logan and the others couldn't stand up, but they were fine. They still hadn't said what happened. Logan said they were attacked by surprise by villains, 2 women and a weird bald guy. Judging by their appearance, Sankyo deduced it was the Samsal group. But where are the attackers now? They have to hunt them down. Logan pointed to the side and said they didn't need to. The bodies there were of the 3 criminals. The scene was frightening. It looked like a meteor had fallen on them. The D1 girl and the bald man were destroyed by Juhyeok. More impressive than professional assassins being here is knowing that Juhyeok defeated them. It's impossible to judge how strong that boy is. Logan said that before he lost consciousness, he saw Juhyeok fight for a few seconds. It was truly incredible. The criminals couldn't touch him. Melissa saw the whole fight too. They thought Logan was the strongest among high school students, but now his arrogance was gone. Jack told his pupil to cheer up. Juhyeok is an anomaly among everything he has ever seen, but Logan is still incredible. More importantly, they said there were 3 people. Where is the other woman? When they asked, they heard the sound of something falling to the ground. The protagonist brought the 3rd woman, trying to find out who was behind those criminals. Instructor Sankyo didn't need to ask if he was injured. They could hear the details when they returned to the academy. The teachers would help the injured students and take them to the hospital. Officially, the student competition was over. Later that night, in the academy dormitory, our protagonist had just come out of the bath. It was truly a tough day. Why was that? Barche suggested that maybe it was because he used a lot of magic today and even defeated 3 villains. Despite everything that happened, he was satisfied. Looking at the system window, he saw that he had met the conditions and achieved the goal of recovering the pearl from the house of Madage Alona. Now, he wondered how something so big fit in his pocket. He was satisfied because he fought against time, and it wasn't easy to achieve that, so the satisfaction of succeeding is even greater. The woman woke up after being knocked out, and when she opened her eyes, the protagonist ordered her to get up. He wanted to know what her ability was. He heard before that they were after a target, and were part of a group called Samsal. Judging by the formation of the 3, the girl should be the support of the group. So, what was her ability? The woman was furious and wouldn't reveal anything. They might have failed, but she could escape from there. Her teleportation magic was interrupted by Juhyeok. The girl couldn't imagine it was possible to interrupt her magic in the middle of the process. Just seeing the magic in action once was enough for the protagonist to understand how it worked. She could basically move using a black orb. The protagonist commented that this was very useful and that he needed her help now. He had something to find, and if she helped, she might keep all her teeth. And that's how our hero managed to find the great center of the forest. Barche commented that Juhyeok didn't keep the promise of not doing anything to her if he found what he was looking for. In that case, He said it was her fault. He asked who their clients were, and she didn't want to talk, so he had to insist a bit to try to get the answer. He knew who the Samsao were, and now about who hired them, he deduced it must be the damn Rockdill. That was his deduction, and if he was right, the Ventrix would try to act again until they succeeded. In that case, the only choice he had was to eliminate the entire family to get rid of their threat. Anyway, the next step after getting the pearl was to face the lost memories through dreams. But now, did he need to sleep to do that? Barche thought so. He also believed he would recover his own memories if Juhyeok recovered his. So, Juhyeok turned off the lights and prepared to sleep. It's hard to sleep when you try to sleep on purpose, but after some time, he managed. The protagonist relived that night he died. After the epic battle that saved Earth's fate, the tower was destroyed, and the debris killed him. It's unknown what he remembers because this is what is told in the stories. But something happened that no one knows. Moments before his death, time stopped, and someone froze that moment. Someone mysterious, appearing only as a shadow, came and said to Juhyeok, "I will take good care of your name, and the names you protected in this world." And that was all that happened. The creature disappeared, and time resumed. Thus ended the great legendary hero. After this crazy dream, he woke up wondering if that was a dream or reality. Were those really his lost memories? Is that how it happened? The protagonist wanted to know if Barche remembered anything too. Judging by his reaction, it seemed so. Barche said that before he was a tiger. Thinking about it, Juhyeok asked if it was really like that. Was he an animal in his past life? According to Barche, he wasn't that cute. Juhyeok asked if Barche saw that guy too and then questioned what his name was before. Barche didn't remember. He only had memories of being a tiger. Now, Juhyeok didn't know if he was crazy from being hit in the head so much, or if this was true. Anyway, he looked at the system again to find out more. The new information was about a secret room in Valhalla. The system wanted him to go to this place and watch the truth. Juhyeok didn't know if this was the last mission or not, so he decided that after today's training, he would ask the teacher about this place. Later, during physical training, Choi Aram was by his side, as always. The muscular guy was also lifting weights. The big surprise for him was a new person there, Makima, who came for the first time and had the courage to ask why the big guy was in this place. Is this girl an idiot? Where else should a mountain of muscles be? Sehyuk asked why Makima was there. This question hit her sore spot. She confessed she was there for the same reason as Sehyuk, out of envy for Juhyeok, and came to train like him. The big guy corrected the girl. He was there not because of Juhyeok, but because he frequented that place long before him. But he understood how the girl felt. She was there because she lost to Choi Aram too, not just Juhyeok who surpassed her. In the fight between the girls, Makima was the favorite and believed she was the second strongest, but Aram was more resilient and had even stronger attack power. She managed to cut Makima's attacks without hesitation. Makima tried to use her most powerful attack, but Aram surpassed her with technique. Before Aram delivered the final blow, she proved to be stronger in every aspect. It was a complete victory. Makima realized that Aram became stronger due to training with Juhyeok. Seeing Aram work so hard in weightlifting, she knew Juhyeok's influence was clear. Makima wanted to learn how to train, and even though Sehyuk was an expert in this, he thought it was better for her to ask Juhyeok for advice. Asking another noble for help was simple, but pride prevented Makima from asking Juhyeok for help. After all, he was poor. Despite her pride, she knew it was the right thing to do. Makima was ready to ask for help, but Juhyeok called her a little bird again. Once again, he's calling me that. She accepted and decided to continue. She said he was training Choi Aram and wanted to ask for help with that too. Unfortunately, the teacher interrupted the moment to ask for Juhyeok's attention. Someone was waiting for him. When he finished training, he could go meet her. The person said it would be the last time they would see each other for a long time. Juhyeok had no idea who it was and decided to go immediately. Once again, Makima couldn't say anything and was interrupted. This time, the shame was killing her. However, the protagonist surprised her. He told the talkative girl that if she wanted to train, she could ask Choi Aram about her routine and follow it. If she worked hard, he might train her too. Choi Aram agreed to help the talkative girl. The senior instructor didn't reveal who the person was, keeping the suspense. He wanted to know who it was before reaching the room. The instructor just said that if Juhyeok thought hard, it could only be one person. Juhyeok had a guess. When they reached the room, he confirmed. It was Rockdill Ventrick, and he looked terrible. Juhyeok wasn't excited at all to see or talk to Rockdill. On the other hand, Rockdill couldn't wait any longer. Despite his arrogance, he knelt and begged for forgiveness. Rockdill threw himself on the ground begging, and his pet girl was beside him as always. He kept saying, "Please forgive me." Juhyeok didn't know the reason, so he asked the instructor if he knew why Rockdill was there. Senkyeol expected Juhyeok to know. It was Rockdill who hired the 3 assassins from before. Hearing this, Rockdill's body froze. The instructor also reminded him that the first time they tried to ambush Juhyeok, it was Rockdill who orchestrated everything and then got away. Now, he committed the same crime again. In the press, This was being reported everywhere, but Juhyeok questioned if it mattered. He believed the Ventric family would cover everything up and pamper Rockdale. Sankyo surprised everyone with the news that the Ventric family had expelled Rockdale. That was why he was there, and in such bad shape. Sankyo explained that not only the Ventrix but also Rockdale's father had disowned him. Unlike before, the Ventrix didn't do anything to cover up the news. Rockdale's reputation was worse than a cockroach that came out of the sewer. Juhyeok then asked the criminal directly. Now that he was without protection and all that was left was jail, how could he save Rockdale? The boy saw a glimmer of hope and shouted that there was a chance. The most important thing was Juhyeok's testimony. The protagonist heard this and showed no reaction. Rockdale begged him to say something, to say that he was innocent and nothing had happened. This request was absurd, but Juhyeok simply replied that he wasn't in the mood. Rockdale begged again and apologized more, even offering his body. But our hero didn't want any of that. When the instructor heard Rockdale offering money to be forgiven, he got angry. But Juhyeok, even being poor, didn't even consider the offer. With no ideas on what could convince Juhyeok, Rockdale had an idea. He grabbed his property by the arm and offered her. If Juhyeok wanted to own the girl, he could give her to him. She was from the royal family of England. Owning her would bring status to Juhyeok and help him rise in power. Of all the offers, this one stirred the protagonist. Would he give the girl as if she were an object? Rockdale showed his usual face and stated that the girl was his property. It was natural for him to sell, use, or trade her. He showed her neck, where there was a mark proving she was his property. So, what did he think of that? If he wanted, he could transfer ownership right now. Sankyo, seeing this, remembered that this was a taboo. Sealing someone with magic was forbidden. It was a spell that prevented the person from acting against their owners. But a normal person couldn't cast such a spell. Who did this for Rockdale? The protagonist couldn't take it anymore just listening. So, he said darkly that people like Rockdale had existed for a long time. People who used forbidden spells on others for evil. Juhyeok placed his hand on her and used his mana. The girl realized he was doing something but didn't know what it was. When Juhyeok removed the seal from her body using his power, she understood. The magic was broken. Slowly, the seal disappeared. Rockdale had just lost his most valuable possession. Juhyeok asked the teacher if he could authorize a punch on him just this once. Sankyo doesn't accept anyone breaking the rules. Violence among students isn't tolerated. But the story is different when the other person is a criminal. Besides, the instructor himself doesn't like the Ventric family, so he authorized it. The negotiation was made while Rockdale watched without being able to react. Now that it was authorized, it was time to relieve the anger. The protagonist was kind, asking the victim to clench his teeth so he wouldn't hurt himself. Despite the warning, the punch was so strong that he flew several meters and lost some teeth. Later, everything was resolved. Barche, who can talk in the protagonist's head, commented that he thought this time Juhyeok would kill Rockdale. If it were 300 years ago, he would have indeed crushed that guy. The truth is that Juhyeok got so angry because in the past one of his disciples did the same kind of spell, and besides, he had been in that situation before. Barche didn't know that the legendary hero had been a slave in the past, but this conversation was interrupted by the girl Yuria. She ran to him to thank him for freeing her. The girl couldn't talk to him at the time, but she had eternal gratitude. From the information she discovered, there's no one who can understand her better in the world. Juhyeok said she didn't need to bother with that, and that she shouldn't look for him to try to repay anything. She should just go back to living her own life as she wished. These words reached the girl's soul. After so much suffering, she thought she would never have so much happiness again. If you who are watching were also moved, please leave your comment and like the video to help me continue this story. The next day, the protagonist met with Professor Lilia to obtain some information. She responded that the Great Palace of Valhalla is located in China, and more specifically, it is a labyrinth owned by the White Lotus Association in China. He even questions if it is the same White Lotus that participated in the competition. When she confirms it is, he becomes thoughtful about it. Invading a labyrinth that doesn't belong to him is a crime, and it would be much more troublesome to do so. And after all, why do labyrinths have to have owners nowadays? He also remembers that, in the past, animals would mysteriously invade dungeons. Perhaps he could do the same, or even destroy everything in his path. Although it might be quicker to do something like that, he prefers not to cause trouble and turmoil for people. He wants to extract some information from the professor. Is there any way to access this dungeon? She explains that the dungeon is open to students of the White Lotus Academy. As soon as she finished her sentence, she covered her mouth, as if she did not want to have said what she just did. Then she charges her student, saying he cannot just stay there, gathering information without giving anything in return. So for that, she asks, to give more information, She wants 3 things in exchange. After that, she shares more details. Our protagonist then does not hesitate and stands up, telling the professor to enjoy her coffee alone. Of course, she begs, says she will tell him everything he wants to know, then he just sits back down. I can bet her intention is still to make him her assistant, but I doubt she'll succeed. They sit down, then he says, keep talking, since she wants to earn his respect. She gets startled and says that what she is about to say should be a secret, so she will speak more softly. The issue is that the Great Palace of Ahala will be one of the stadiums for the World Championship in the 2nd semester. With this, very cautiously, Juhyeok asks if this is really true. Do other professors also know about this? She explains that no, only she knows, and in this case, he questions how she has this information. Perhaps she is boasting about information she should not have, so Lilia says she has an informant. In this case, he asks, so is it a world championship involving competition among all the schools in the world? She answers yes, but unlike the academy, where the competition is among the 3 most important schools in the world championship is like the Olympics. Although this may seem very impressive to us, the protagonist is just another annoyance. He also isn't sure if he can participate in it, and it will take quite a while, so he questions if there is any other way to get there faster. Realizing that Juhyeok is so determined to reach this place, this leaves Lilia slightly surprised. She replies that she has no information or contacts with the White Lotus itself. The professor is not sure about the method, but said she will try to gain access for Juhyeok. In exchange, he has to do one thing for her. Lilia asks him to accompany her to the International Society of Monster Research. It is a one-day event, so he won't have to worry about losing much time. So sometime that we do not know how long it is, they are in the north of London, in Tottenham, where the International Society for Monster Research is located. When he arrived at the event door, he was already furious, having spent so many hours traveling just for this. That talk of just one day was also a lie. She ignores his words and responds that they are here on the weekend. She might even extend his day off at the academy to Monday. Most importantly of all, Juhyeok asks why they are really here. Then, to answer that question, she puts him in a test room to attack a monster. It seems that people evaluate the boy's performance. He is here to prove the article she is writing. In exchange for her information, he must kill some monsters for her. The boar attacked quickly and took only 1 hit, and then disappeared. And it wasn't just a few monsters, it was an hour and a half of killing all kinds of monsters, until he was tired at the end of that time. Juhyeok questions Lilia again. She lied again, as she said there would only be 3 monsters. So why were there so many? Professor Lilia pretends she doesn't know what he's talking about. Anyway, Juhyeok asks what happened with the climate here. As soon as they enter this place, people began to look strange at the two. He then asks if she fought with these people or asked them to be her assistants as well. The professor finally reveals her intentions. She said that for decades people believed in certain techniques and theories. Then, suddenly, an article appeared out of nowhere, contradicting everything they thought and believed. The protagonist realizes that these people want to maintain an archaic and less efficient knowledge than the professor taught on the first day of class. But he questions if these tests with swords prove something different. Why don't they themselves kill the monsters to prove the articles? The professor, with a darker look, says it's because they don't want to. Basically, there is an elite that controls the most accepted hunting strategy theories. They impose this on society and the world. They conduct their own tests to prove the methods they want. It turns out that the current high ranking in the society that evaluates this are incompetent people, who have taken their positions only by nepotism. After hearing all the explanation, the old people didn't like having their theories refuted. The protagonist agrees that these people are disgusting, and he liked helping her with that. He has already helped the professor with what she wanted. Now she has to repay him with help to go to the White Lotus. Lilia then surprises by saying it was a good choice for him to have come here. After all, the director of the White Lotus is also at this place. Juhyeok is very smart and says that in that case, he knows who she is. Has he seen her today? Then he's going to talk to her right now. Before he can get up, someone knocks on the door and asks if student Juhyeok is here and if they can speak with him for a moment. The protagonist recognizes the voice. It is familiar, and he says yes and can come in now. The room is immediately illuminated with such beauty. The person before them is the director of the White Lotus Academy, and definitely one of the most beautiful women in this story. Not only that, she politely says it's a pleasure to meet him. Her name is Seol-yin. Our protagonist reciprocates the courtesy and says his name as well and asks what can he help her with. The woman says that, in fact, she's here to ask for a favor, if he could handle a person for her. Professor Lilia says that, since the conversation seems to be getting serious, then she'll leave him alone. Then she exits the room. Juhyeok asks her what he needs to do. She explains how her Seo family was the first to be founded after the era of chaos. Thanks to that they managed to build the White Lotus Academy, and educate strong warriors. However, there was a genius in the family who at 13 could defeat adults. This person stepped on his brothers and members of the Seolang clan family. Even the family head was run over by this person. In the end, this person concluded that there was nothing more to be learned in the world outside and locked himself in the family Seol's training room at the White Lotus Palace. Juhyeok asks if she wants him to run over this arrogant person. Seo-yeon says yes. However, Juhyeok questions that there must be several strong people out there for her to ask this task. He even points to her and says that her magical power is far from weak. The girl acknowledges that our protagonist has good eyes. She says she even used magic to hide it, but there are two reasons that make things complicated. The first is that the person fights using only their physical strength. The second is that the person is the same age as Juhyeok. After watching the competition, she knows he is physically strong, so if the person lost to someone of his own age, his pride would be damaged, and that's why she personally came to ask the favor. Juhyeok accepts, but doesn't expect it to be for free. Seo-yeon agrees and says she is very important, and also a very important person. She can also ask for favors without needing to pay anywhere in the world. Our protagonist interrupts the woman and makes it clear that he doesn't want money. There is a place he wants to go. Can she arrange for him? This totally catches her off guard. The scene cuts to a little later, and they are now in China, in front of the White Lotus Group building. Juhyeok tells her he did not expect to do this on the day he agreed to it. Seo-yeon says he said he was free until Monday, so the sooner, the better. He agrees, then she asks if the place he needs to enter is the Great Palace. Juhyeok says yes, then she says it will not be a difficult request, but they should enter first. As they enter, some of the students seem surprised to see her walk in, then they enter a room. He tells her he is curious about something. Seo-yeon asks what it is, and he says it doesn't seem like she paid attention to the competition, but she wants him to deal with this person so much. Seo-yeon recognizes and agrees. She explains that for her it is more important to destroy the arrogance of this person and then organize the White Lotus to reach the top again. Juhyeok says he understands, but he doesn't know if he agrees that such a person can be so important. She then tells him that everything is here and that, when he steps on this magic seal, he will be transported to the training room. He says that's fine, then steps on it, and asks Seo-yeon what the person's name is. The woman says the person's name is Yeon-lang. Upon arriving there we see the person so special. It's an arrogant girl. She says if he was sent by the family to make her leave it won't work, so he should go away. Juhyeok asks if she is always so rude to people she just met. He punches her with much form, but she easily catches his fist. This surprises him. Then she hits him back with a palm imbued with aura. She calls him an idiot, asking if he will continue to underestimate his opponent, then mocks him for his punch. He tells her they should introduce themselves. However, she is surprised to see that he is not injured. He grabbed her wrist to block the attack. Juhyeok now attacks the girl again. She puts her arm up to block the hit. This attack definitely causes her pain, forcing Yeon-lang to retreat from him. Now things are different. The arrogant girl wants to know the name of this handsome man. He tells her he is a 17-year-old high school student who underestimated his opponent. The girl now decides to keep her distance and look for a counterattack, but he doesn't give her the chance to keep her distance, then prepares another punch, hitting her directly in the stomach. This also excites him. For the first time someone has exceeded his expectations. She staggered back with the blow to reduce the impact. Juhyeok recognizes that she isn't bad. Not even his students from 300 years ago had this level of mobility. Yeon-lang starts to think seriously about this. There wasn't supposed to be someone her age at the same level as her. She starts to smile with excitement. Since he is so strong, it means she can go all out. Juhyeok is glad that her pride remains intact. This gives him a chance to continue this fight as well. We see that they are being watched on a screen. It is Seo-yeon who is watching. Her secretary calls her and says he knows it's presumptuous, but wonders if Juhyeok will be okay. The man says he doesn't believe a student from another school could do anything against someone from the White Lotus. He says he is currently being pressured by her. Is this a waste of time? The next words from the man really seem rude to me, because he says that even the Miss lost to Yeon-lang. But to keep his head safe he says that this was due to the fight being without magic power, only with physical strength, and only in this way the master could lose. Despite not liking this fact, she acknowledges that she lost to the girl, but even if she used magic, she doesn't believe she would win. The man didn't expect these words and doesn't accept it. However, the woman explains that at the time the difference in magic power between her and Yeon-lang was minimal, and this was several years ago. Seo-yeon believes the girl must have become even stronger physically and mentally than before, so she already has more chances of winning, not even with magic. Not enough this reality shock. The man also questions that Juhyeok will die if she continues to face Yeon-lang. Despite the man's concern, the woman remains unconcerned. She says that boy is not normal. Something in him is strange and his feats in Valhalla prove it. We return to the battlefield. The manaless ninja girl attacks our protagonist. She likes very different nails. Her cutting blow is fast, but Juhyeok dodges. However, Yanlang quickly follows with a knee attack. She feels she hit and thinks she got him now, but soon the pain grows and she screams while clutching her knee. Yanlang questions if he has a steel head, and he doesn't deny anything. The girl is sure she hit. He decided to test if his forehead or her knee was harder. Is this guy crazy? The girl starts to get annoyed with her opponent. Even her strongest attacks are not having an effect. She internally says that this hurts her pride, but the physical strength of this guy is greater than hers. Then she questions why he is fighting without using magic. The protagonist simply says that's because Yanlang prefers it that way. Upon hearing this, she gets furious. She tells him to use everything he has, because she will do the same. Now it will be a dispute with the maximum power from both sides. Juhyeok realizes that the girl started to accumulate magic, so she also knows how to fight this way. He questions if she is angry, and his slight smile makes the girl even more furious. In this case, our legendary hero says he will destroy her pride now. Yanlang, feeling his mana, loses her posture and starts to question if he is really from high school. She is sure that this boy is the craziest guy she has ever met, so in this case she won't need to hold back anymore. Yanlang advances at high speed. Her fist is radiating magical energy and was going directly to his forehead. Juhyeok didn't move until she started to feel his skin. The girl convinced she hit him now, but he dodged Matrix mode and left the girl surprised. Juhyeok says he had a lot of fun until now, but it's time to fulfill his part of the deal, and hits the girl hard enough to lift her off the ground. The rest of the breath left in her lungs was to say, "You monster!" Then another girl was defeated with these fists of equality. The protagonist was satisfied with the sensation in his fist, but in the room where they are watching the fight, the two people are stunned. They just saw the impossible. Juhyeok, after defeating the girl, brought her gently and entered to Seal Yin. He brought the girl after defeating her as agreed. Seal Yin didn't know what to say even after a few minutes after watching the fight. Then she asks if Juhyeok is injured, maybe a broken skull or fractured fist, but he didn't even get a scratch. The woman insists and wants to know how difficult the fight was. He says that this fight was well balanced. One time he hit, another time Yanlang got hit. Then in the end he admits he was a bit disappointed. The way he let her fall shows how disappointed he is. The girl wakes up with the fall and wonders where she is. Was she hit by a meteor? Yanlang is startled to realize that after years the girl was taken out of the training room where she had been in seclusion for years. I am surprised that the girl is angry when she sees Seal Yin. The older woman, on the other hand, says it's been a long time and that they haven't seen each other. But something more important than that, she says she has to honor her agreements, so it's time for payment. She repeats again what the protagonist wants as a reward: access to the Great Palace. He confirms once more, then she says she can let him enter now. Juhyeok doesn't hesitate in anything he does. The protagonist agrees, and they immediately proceed. Yanlang has just been run over and was left aside in the room. The assistant does not know how to handle this situation and asks if he wants to take care of the injuries. The girl says she wants to know the name of the guy who defeated her. He hasn't said it until now. He replies that his name is Juhyeok. After hearing his name, the girl smiles and says that he is the strongest person alive. She is sure of it. All that arrogance turned into admiration, so all she wants now is to fight him again. Cut to a mysterious person talking to themselves, asking something about the strongest. Then we return to Juhyeok. He questions if this place is really a labyrinth. He recalls that Seal Yin said that the Great Palace is a unique labyrinth that looks exactly like a castle. She explained that he needs to be careful of monsters called living armors, and besides that, there should be no difficulty in exploring. He had questioned how long he can stay there, and she says about 5 hours. In that case, Juhyeok starts to stretch since he's under a time constraint, so these living armors attacking him will delay him. Some time later, and we see the last living armor rushing at him, and he quickly slices it in half, and then it just falls into multiple pieces. Then he wonders where the office is, saying that he has already searched more than 20 rooms. It would take a long time to check all. However, Barky tells him to enter that room. He says it's just a hunch. When Juhyeok enters, he immediately notices an old painting on the wall, and looking closer, the place looks like an office. The protagonist wonders if this painting is of a liftry, then notices that there is a name written underneath. It's a liftry Johnny. In this room, there are various items, but his goal here is to find some secret passage. Juhyeok decides that searching isn't working and won't use more refined methods. He begins to punch everything in front of him and break the furniture. After destroying some things, he finds a trapdoor on the floor. Without thinking much about it, he decides to open it and enter. When he goes down the stairs, the system announces that the conditions have been met. Alafori Johnny's secret room has been found. And something surprises the protagonist, as he finds a woman sitting at an old table. This chair suggests that she has been waiting for a visit. Juhyeok questions who she is and what place this is. The mysterious person greets him, and says he should sit down first. She introduces herself as a guide. Juhyeok is surprised. He has never seen anyone with that name. The girl says that's just her function, not her name. She also mentions that her name was taken. This reminds our protagonist of his dream, that mysterious being that said something about taking his name. Because of this, Juhyeok questions if she also had her name stolen by someone, and when the girl confirms, he asks for an explanation. After all, this makes no sense. The girl then says names hold power. All creatures build their lives around their name. All actions and achievements influence their name in the world. The name represents the power and influence of people, and then that thing steals those names and absorbs the power they have. If that makes any sense, Juhyeok questions what happens to those who have their names stolen. Her answer surprises him. She says he already knows people like that. Those who have their names stolen become a constellation. The protagonist questions if all who have their names stolen really become a constellation. The girl confirms that yes and adds that everyone except for one reincarnation, which is his case. Juhyeok is cautious about this person. After all, how she knows about this. Realizing his distrust, the girl questions if he still doubts her. She explains that the reincarnated receive a system window. This leaves Juhyeok with other doubts. So does this girl also have a system window? The protagonist decides to ask directly what she knows about who promised to take the name from the Tower of Doom. She tells him the name is the Lord of the Labyrinth, he who sent the Tower of Destruction to Earth before to make a name gain power. This explanation does not make sense to Juhyeok, and much less to us. However, when Juhyeok questions that a Lord of the Labyrinth would only have the power to send a tower to a labyrinth that he controls, before she answers, his eyes are filled with astonishment. The mysterious girl says he must have realized the world they live in and is called planet Earth is a labyrinth. Of course, Juhyeok doesn't accept this, and the girl responds that it's his choice to believe or not, but he can't ignore the facts. Accepting this assumption, Juhyeok questions the purpose of this person sending a tower of destruction was to make a name for himself. The girl confirms. At that time the towers brought great chaos to the earth. Only the most powerful warriors managed to survive and made fame and power to become constellations. Juhyeok died after defeating the Barche and making the tower be destroyed, but he is sure that his disciples became constellations, as they all also made their name. Juhyeok was here in search of answers, but now everything has become annoying. In the end, it's all a game for an omnipotent labyrinth lord. The girl then says it's not quite like that. The fact of him reincarnating is a variable for the Lord of the Labyrinth. Contrary to what Juhyeok believed, who reincarnated him and gave them the system window is not the Lord of the Labyrinth. Another omnipotent being makes Juhyeok more annoyed. So who is this person? She says she also doesn't know, but she believes that this person must have a purpose related to Juhyeok. She decides not to waste more time, and with a spell, she makes a shimmering ring appear and immediately hands it to the protagonist. Despite wanting to talk more after finally finding someone, she says she doesn't have much time. What he needs to know is that this will be the chance for the counterattack. Juhyeok asks the same question you must be thinking of making too. Why doesn't she have time if they are here and now? The girl responds that the Lord of the Labyrinth is hunting her. It is dangerous to stay longer, or he will find them. She then says that in the future they will meet again. Snaps her fingers, and in the blink of an eye, Juhyeok appears back at the entrance of the labyrinth of the Great Palace. After so much annoying information, the mood of our reincarnated hero is not good. That damn tower was sent by someone who steals the names of heroes. So the culprit who prevented him from living a good life is alive to this day somewhere. This damn Lord of the Labyrinth has to pay. He examines the ring and is sure that it is not revealing his location. After thinking about everything he regained from his past life, those storage stones contain a lot of magical energy from that time. He has not yet absorbed them all, so this will be his next goal. Despite people in this era being much weaker than 300 years ago, he needs to become even more powerful than he was before. Meanwhile, we are shown an island in the North Pacific. That same man watches the news about the famous group of assassins being arrested after being run over by a Valhalla student. Furious with the failure of the people he hired, he breaks the iPad screen just by squeezing it, and then throws it on the ground in frustration. This person is the leader of the believers of the Dragon King Hannibal. He has been keeping an eye on Kim Juhyeok after hearing the words of the constellation. It was great when the Ventric family asked to eliminate him, but even these people failed. The man made all this scene in front of another person. This is George, some important person of the underworld. He says he understands the anger of his friend, as he also lost one of his important men to this guy. George was responsible for Desira, the first who tried to destroy Juhyeok and ended up dead. George says that Desira was amateur and revealed information to the target. For fear of him revealing more things, George himself made sure that Desira did not speak anymore. His suggestion is that his friend should do the same. Those three are going to prison and are a risk to him. So if he wants, George can silence them too. This solves the risks of information being leaked, but Juhyeok, What can they do to eliminate him? George says that about this boy. His friend should just forget about him for now. The reason is that Ilgio is watching him now, so it's better not to interfere. This information leaves the man stunned. Even the bad guys fear the guys worse than them. George agrees that people like the two of them are bad, but there are those who are really crazy even for them. In the end, the two agree that if they touch a target of that person it will be bad, so for now all they can do is watch Juhyeok. Then we are shown that these people are already moving to meet their death earlier. I mean, to meet their target Juhyeok. The protagonist was surrounded by them, so he asks who they are and what they want. He is already in Valhalla, and then Juhyeok questions whether it's a good idea for them to get involved with a student inside the academy. Despite the situation, it's the criminals who start feeling cornered. Then another scene is shown. Adelia Ventrix's men report that they are all ready. The woman comments that it took quite a while for them to finish the preparations. Despite this, she was calm. The man explains the preparations that needed to be made. All she wants to know is if they are ready for him. Despite some hesitation, the man affirms that they are, also explaining about a certain transformation of the sanctuary. Finally, Adelia orders the butler to be in the contact group and then he must lead the elimination group. The man accepts the orders, but for a moment he questions why his mistress is so cautious against a mere student. Despite her calm demeanor, she makes it clear that she does not tolerate insubordination, but her anger is only so that they understand this. Once they grasp her intention, the woman calms down. The most mysterious of all is that Adelia is following the wills of her constellation, so their intention is to invoke the Ventric family's constellation. Things still seem confusing, folks, so wait to better understand her intention. The soldiers, after surrounding Juhyeok, begin the stage of creating a distortion in space to prevent him from escaping or anyone interfering. Our protagonist realizes that a subspace has been created around this area, but he is not frightened. He praises the men's strategy, as drawing the attention of the academy would be terrible for them. Moreover, he was curious about who is responsible for this idea. Juhyeok even comments that he has a hunch. His bet is on the Ventric family. Despite being experienced, the man reacts with surprise and questions how Juhyeok knows this. Our protagonist simply deduced the two enemies he made so far, only the Ventric do not use dark magic. Since they were discovered, the butler says they no longer need to hide and should call the elimination team now. When the subspace magic is undone, hundreds of armed people appear around Juhyeok. Their intention is quite simple: to eliminate the target. However, even in the situation of the greatest possible disadvantage, Juhyeok is not shaken. He even jokes about all of them. How can so many people be needed to handle a mere student? They make it clear that orders are orders, so since he has no choice, the MC decides that he will have to act according to the circumstances. All the men prepare to attack together. With just one body movement, Juhyeok pushes all the people on his right backward. Only one person was able to make dozens fall backward. The butler, using his fencing, tries to hit Juhyeok and fails. The protagonist decides to draw his sword too and comments that it's disappointing that these people only know how to swing a sword. The other men try to hit him by attacking from behind, and even with a surprise attack, Juhyeok dodges. He easily manages to dodge and defeat everyone effortlessly. The butler's expression darkens when he decides to attack again. It was his turn to try to hit the enemy from behind, but he also failed. He leads the group and is not able to hit the target. For sure, this is not the strength of a high school student. Despite the intention of these people to take his life, the protagonist does not use lethal weapons. He uses the hilt of his sword and shows how painful it can be to be struck in this way. When his blow hits, it seems like the man's soul leaves his body. Before he faints or maybe even dies, he can only think that he shouldn't have ignored his leader's concern and should have prepared more. After the defeat of the leader of the soldiers, Juhyeok is happy to realize that the one responsible for this finally appeared. Adelia personally came to see the target. She looks at her fallen soldiers and includes her butler. She always made sure to recruit people stronger than average. This boy defeating all of them like this is frightening. Adelia draws her sword and says Juhyeok should be proud. Seeing the sacred relic of the Ventric family is an honor that common people could never receive. The MC laughs and says that a simple dagger like that is nothing. Moreover, seeing that this family prides itself on using so many people to attack a student is pitiful. Tired of being insulted, Adelia attacks with her incredible dagger that she is so proud of, but before she reaches her target, the mana stones her soldiers were using start to resonate and glow very brightly in a yellow tone. No one knew what was happening, not even Adelia, so everyone was astonished. However, our protagonist was calm and with his hands in his pockets. His confidence reminds me of Satoru Gojo. Adelia's dagger glows in the same color as the stones, and then she feels something very strange. The entire environment lost its color, and only the mana stones glow. Adelia also noticed the same effect. Everyone was paralyzed. In fact, only one person was not affected and was watching everything calmly. Everyone then froze, but conscious. Adelia wonders if her body cannot move due to some forced sanctuary effect. She observes her soldiers and believes that they have their bodies and minds frozen. She manages to maintain her consciousness. However, However, how can this guy still move freely? When he touches Adelia's sword, a system window appears and asks a question. Master? Initially, our protagonist doesn't understand, but a person manifests with the energy of all the mana stones the soldiers had taken. This person is the very constellation that the important Ventric family venerates. However, something they've never seen before is the face beneath the mask. When the girl reveals her young face, the only ones who can see it are Juhyeok and perhaps Adelia Ventric, who still retains some consciousness. Initially, they don't say anything to each other, and the nervous girl waits for his response. Then, we are shown the girl's dark past. When she was a child, Juhyeok found her in a similar situation. Back then, Hyeon-oh Kim wasn't the legendary hero, just an adventurer who encountered a slave trader, and the girl was one of the slaves. He recognized that her eyes reflected hatred for the world, and he understood. The little girl said he didn't understand anything and knew nothing about her. However, Juhyeok admitted that he didn't know about her, but he revealed that he, too, had once been a slave. Juhyeok shared that when he was young, he was kidnapped, and for a long time, he carried the shackles of prohibition like her. This revelation left her silent, and then he asked if she didn't want to be free. His gaze was serious as he asked, but the girl angrily shouted that he must understand it's impossible for her to be free, so he should just leave. That wasn't a direct answer, so our hero told her a story about the two ways to remove the shackles. One is when the owner willingly releases you, and the other is when the owner dies, usually breaking the seal of prohibition. However, her owner had already died, so there seemed to be no way out. But there is one method that people don't consider, which is to use your mana to nullify the prohibition magic. He worked hard on this to gain his own freedom. Juhyeok broke the shackles of prohibition and freed the girl, something she never imagined was possible. Her hero then told her to be as free as she wanted and to return to her family. However, the girl had lost not only her freedom but also had no family or friends left to return to. In that case, Juhyeok said he would soon embark on a journey to crush all the slave traders he encountered, asking the young lady if she'd like to join him. And that's how they met, and she became his disciple. After more than 300 years, they remember everything, but neither of them can recall her name. Finding his beloved student is gratifying and helped him understand what it means to have your name stolen. Since Juhyeok can't remember her name, he'll call her what he used to in the old days. Idiot, it's been a while. This scene was witnessed by Adelia, who could only imagine the shock of seeing the constellation she venerates appear and be called an idiot by the person they wanted to kill. The girl then approaches Adelia, calls Juhyeok Master, and asks what she should do with these people. The girl with the crow mask takes back her relic, releases her spell, and returns everyone to normal. But now no one is conscious, not even Adelia. If Juhyeok wishes, she can kill them all right now as punishment. Our hero says no because he has a better idea. I wanted to see more of the woman's reaction when she realizes that the constellation she follows calls the man she wanted to kill. We don't know how long they stayed there, but the next day, the professor in charge at the academy saw that the Ventric family made a donation of 5 billion won to Valhalla to sponsor the student Kim Juhyeok. It's worth noting that this sea of zeros converts to $3.7 million, which is still a fortune. So much money that the professor starts to go a bit mad. Instructor Sankyo went to see his colleague's reaction upon discovering this as well. He recalls that the first time Rockdale was accused of ordering Desira to eliminate the protagonist, the Ventric family donated a lot of money to hush up the matter, and Juhyeok refused. That's why he believes the protagonist will refuse again. To confirm their theory, the student Juhyeok is called to a meeting, and to the professor's surprise, the protagonist says he accepts the money. With the professor's surprise, he asks what reason to refuse $3 million as a gift. The professor then says that now Juhyeok is a VIP student and will have to move to the premium dormitory. The protagonist admits that he has no complaints about his normal dorm, so they can discuss this later. Finally, the professor wonders what the difference is this time compared to when they tried to donate to quash the rumors about Rockdale before. Our legendary hero, while walking through the school, recalls his conversation with his idiot crow mask disciple. The girl suggested eliminating everyone who tried to harm Juhyeok. However, he wanted to take better advantage of the situation. Juhyeok awakened Adelia and explained to the woman that their constellation had authorized Juhyeok to do whatever he wanted with the Ventric family. What does she think about that? Before Adelia could say anything, the constellation stated that she originally created the Ventric family to serve the master. So Adelia asks if the phrase passed down through generations, all for one, was about this. The furious constellation says yes. This idiot finally realized the woman has just discovered that this person is the master of her master. Now that it's clear, our protagonist approaches and asks Adelia what he should do with them now. Even though Juhyeok doesn't like this family because of their arrogance, he acknowledges that their power and prestige are real in society. Because of this, he has some tasks for Adelia to carry out. It's true that since Adelia became the leader of the Ventric family, they were in decline but rose to the top. Therefore, Juhyeok orders her to continue guiding the Ventric family and start supporting his objectives from now on. She must do this without questioning his reasons. To remind her of what's at stake, Juhyeok points to the Lady Constellation and says that if she steps out of line, everyone will be paying a visit to the other world. The protagonist's disciple says she'd rather kill them all right now, and if he changes his mind, she can do it right now. In that case, she says she'd like to stay longer, but her time is running out. Manifesting her body in this world consumes a lot of energy, and the dozens of mana stones they brought are already running out. Juhyeok asks if all constellations have these restrictions. The girl doesn't care and can't stay any longer. She removes her mask and says that being able to see her master's reincarnation in person is priceless. Juhyeok understands what she meant and orders his beloved disciple to go rest. She puts her mask back on and says that before she leaves, he needs to know something. Besides her, it seems that another constellation has also become a constellation. He will see her soon. After this last message, the idiot girl with the crow mask returns to another dimension. That was all he discovered that day, but it doesn't make things much easier. Juhyeok still doesn't know who the constellation he'll meet soon is. He also wonders if all his students have also become constellations. The protagonist then returned to the classroom for the first time since coming back from China. When he sat down, Makima kept staring at him intensely. Meanwhile, Juhyeok continued his internal dialogue with Bar-che. The constellation Bar-che said he remembered that the Lord of the Labyrinth gave him the name Bar-che and the power to control the Tower of the End. He explains that the name and power he received influenced his actions, and the current Bar-che acknowledges that he wasn't acting of his own free will at that time. After a long conversation throughout the day, still while walking to his dormitory, Juhyeok's mind wouldn't stop thinking and trying to understand the mysteries of the Lord of the Labyrinth. It's very frustrating to be a pawn in the hands of a mysterious creature. Knowing that they can oppose the Lord of the Labyrinth when he talked to the guide made him less irritated. The next day, Juhyeok met the guide again. He didn't expect their reunion to happen so quickly because of the urgency the woman had to leave earlier. Moreover, he was sure he was in the academy's cafeteria. How does this woman do that? The woman asked what the shiny thing he was holding was. Juhyeok was furious and wanted to throw it at her head. Because of her, his food disappeared. She apologized for interrupting the man during the most important time of the day. More importantly, she wanted to know if the ring was still safe with him. Juhyeok showed that it was, and the woman said that was good because they were going to start using it right away. Even though she said that, to the protagonist, it didn't seem like it would be of any use in combat. The woman said he should just use it, and try to cross some labyrinth. Juhyeok then said that natural labyrinths no longer appear in this era and that the existing ones have owners. The woman clarified that these weren't the labyrinths. The Lord of the Labyrinth would create new ones here on Earth, and these new ones were their target. It would be something like the calamity that happened before. Hearing that brought back bad memories for Juhyeok. In the past, he became the legendary hero while fighting against the calamity. At that time, several of them broke and caused the greatest chaos in Earth's history. The protagonist then asked when and where these dungeon breaks would occur. The woman said they would start in about 3 months, and it seems there is a specific location, a country called Korea. She informed him as if she didn't know where this place was, but the protagonist said that was great because he lived there. She agreed that it was indeed convenient, but he should remember that this world, above all, is the Labyrinth Lord's domain. So why is he creating new labyrinths here? The protagonist said that the reason is that the Labyrinth Lord must be preparing other names to choose from. She said, exactly, just like back then. He will create towers for new heroes to emerge so he can steal their names. People interpret this. The woman said that the labyrinth is created with the name, and the power of the name is concentrated in the labyrinth's boss. The protagonist's mission is to absorb the name given by the Labyrinth Lord in all the dungeons that appear. This will be the starting point for their counterattack. However, Juhyeok questioned something. Stealing 1 or 2 names wouldn't make a difference against the Labyrinth Lord. The woman admitted that was true. Their plan was that when the Labyrinth Lord realized his strategy wasn't working because the labyrinths were disappearing before they could be used to create a more famous name, she affirmed that the Labyrinth Lord would send countless names into the world at once, and that would be their opportunity. Juhyeok must absorb several names and increase his strength. If the plan is to absorb names and turn that into power, Juhyeok had another question. What's the difference between them and the Labyrinth Lord? The girl said that was unexpected. She hadn't imagined he would care about such a detail. The protagonist then said that if that's the case, she doesn't know him well. The red-haired woman explained that, first of all, they haven't harmed anyone to obtain the names. Moreover, if the Labyrinth Lord steals a person's name, they will either become a constellation or reincarnate. It doesn't matter which happens, the person's body will be trapped in non-existence. Now, if the protagonist uses the ring and steals the names, he will only absorb the power, and the people will remain alive. Additionally, over time, This contract will weaken, and the people will be freed from it. She then said it was up to him to decide, and either way, he would get to know each person and could choose whether to do it or not. Juhyeok then said that when the calamity arrives, she will find out his decision. The red-haired girl told him he should also create a team to prevent the calamity. He questioned, so when they destroy the labyrinth, everything will be resolved. She explained that yes, but the monsters that escape from the labyrinth during this process won't disappear when the labyrinth is destroyed. Therefore, he must train people to stop the monsters that escape from the labyrinths. When her effect passed, he was back in the cafeteria line, leaving everyone confused. Where did this guy come from? Later, while heading back to his dorm, he thought that woman was a nuisance. At least she could have teleported him to a better place. And now he's pondering that request to form a team. Not that he's against it, because before he reincarnated, he also had disciples. As he was thinking about this, the girl from China appeared before him, confident. He then asked if she was another crazy person who liked getting beaten up. She said she thought a lot after losing to him and came to a conclusion. He was stronger than her, and that's why she lost. You're a genius for realizing that. But the girl said she thought she was similar to the protagonist, a person who had never experienced defeat. If that's what she thinks, Juhyeok told her she was completely wrong. He's someone who works hard to be strong and doesn't rely on talent. Yanlang said that's what she thought, but now she understands that those fists were loaded with combat experience, and the difference between them is just that. She said she became much stronger after fighting him, so now she would stay here to continue fighting him. They would do it until she defeated him. Juhyeok already had problems with a crazy person asking him to teach swordsmanship, and now he has a lunatic who wants to get punched to learn martial arts. Juhyeok told her to stay away from him, but the girl didn't want to give up. She came from China to Korea just for that. The protagonist then told her to spend her time learning her family's martial arts. This question shifted the girl's enthusiasm to sadness. She explained that she was only taught until she was 6 years old by her family. After that, she was excluded from training. Yanlang said she didn't know why, so she started challenging adults to hone her skills, and that made everyone even more distant from her. After hearing this, the protagonist thought that this was different from what was told to him. This girl clearly has a lot of talent and loves to fight, and they said she distanced herself from training and isolated herself. Juhyeok asked if it was mandatory to stay isolated in the White Lotus Palace during training. Yanlang said it wasn't. She stayed there because she was tired of being treated as a problem for the family and excluded by everyone. The sad lunatic girl's mood turned back to excitement, and she said it was fine because now she had found him. If she kept fighting Juhyeok, she could get stronger without needing her family's lessons. Of course, he refused to waste his time doing that, so Yanlang begged. Teach me martial arts! The protagonist continued finding it strange. If she was excluded from the family and confined to the White Lotus, why did Celia try to bring her back? If it's as the girl says, it would have been better for the family to continue keeping her locked up in the palace. The protagonist said that was fine, but then pulled her hands away. They would fight, yes, but they needed to go to the academy because fighting in the middle of the street is crazy. So in the academy gym, the two beautiful girls were training, and the muscular guy was lifting weights. They noticed Juhyeok's arrival and the girl they had never seen before. Then Choi Aram teleported to the protagonist's side and called his name. Not even a great master could predict her movements. Teach me fencing asked who this woman is. Juhyeok said that they met at the White Lotus and she came here to fight him. Choi Aram, upon hearing this, thought about this girl. Could it be what she's thinking? It could only mean one thing. Teach me fencing asking why she came from so far away. The crazy ones seemed to attract each other. Yanlang went to Choi Aram and asked if she wanted to fight too. Makima was also jealous in her own way. After everyone got to know each other and exchanged threats, the fight was about to begin, and the protagonist said that he remembered agreeing to a fight between him and Yanlang. So why were there so many spectators here? Teach me fencing. Teach her so she can teach me. Yanlang didn't mind having people watch her fight. She only cared about showing her opponent her progress. In that case, Juhyeok said he was eager to see how much she had improved in such a short time. At that moment, the protagonist remembered the words of that annoying woman. He needed to form a team. He told Yanlang that if she wanted to be strong, she had to accept his challenge. If he won here, she would have to become his disciple. Although she wanted to fight him, she found this request strange and refused. So, our protagonist said they would talk with their fists from here on. The lunatic who has muscles for brains said she agreed with that. She charged and made an attack using her elbow. The protagonist acknowledged that she was stronger than before. Having her strength recognized made the girl even more excited, and she said that this time he wouldn't block her attack. Her mana aura was so strong that the other girls watching could barely stay close to the arena. The muscular guy said that her mana concentration was higher than Juhyeok's during the competition. Yanlang then attacked, using her mana to make her most powerful strike. She told herself that he had proven to be the strongest, so it shouldn't be a problem for her to use all her strength in this attack. To the girl's surprise, Juhyeok was in the same combat pose as her. He suggested facing her with the same attack technique. The two, with joy on their faces, collided their fists, and the energy from the attack sparked, creating an incredible gust of wind. Yanlang, using all her strength, recognized that she was being pushed back by him. But that shouldn't be possible, considering she had more mana than him at that moment. He's even stronger than before. The protagonist said that now it was his turn to attack, and he would use this move against her only once. If she blocked it, the victory would be hers. He prepared a kick and aimed directly at the girl's defense. Although she defended against the kick, it wasn't possible to lessen the impact. Yanlang was defeated with just one blow. With that, the protagonist said he had gained another disciple. After sleeping for a while, she woke up and asked what happened. She then felt pain in her stomach and said she must have lost. The protagonist said he thought she would sleep until tomorrow, so she woke up rather quickly. The girl asked if that was a compliment or an insult. He then told her to stop questioning her master. The girl said she thought of suggesting a fight without using mana, but it seemed the result wouldn't be different. She acknowledged the protagonist's strength and said she was proud to be his disciple. Yanlang then asked if she was officially his first disciple now, but our legendary hero replied that wasn't the case. Besides, why is a high school student already taking on disciples? Choi Erim then told the girl with the cat tooth that he was telling the truth. She was the master's first student. Meow. How the protagonist was going to explain that she also wasn't the first. Better to let that go. Yanlang was furious about the meow Choi Erim was saying. Was she trying to provoke her? Teach me fencing. Said yes. Was she angry? Yanlang said her name was not that and to stop giving her nicknames. Choi Erim insisted that meow was cute. Juhyeok watched the girl's argument, deep in thought. He found this nostalgic, as many years ago, this often happened with his former students. This scene is quite pleasant, so he kept watching the two bond for a while. Even after 300 years, it continues to be enjoyable. After much conversation, he called for Meow, and even though she was criticizing Erim for giving her nicknames, how could the girl resist when it was her master? Juhyeok told Meow to respect Choi Erim because she was her senpai. Besides, Erim should help the younger ones like a good senpai. Erim was very happy to be recognized by her master. Yanlang couldn't hide her jealousy, or maybe it was because she wasn't the first in something else. The protagonist ordered the end of the jokes since they had done enough for today, and everyone should rest. In that case, Yanlang asked where she would sleep. The protagonist questioned if she hadn't already resolved that when she came. The truth is, she didn't think much about these things. Yanlang told Seolian that she would come to Korea to fight and got on a plane without thinking about anything else. Juhyeok began to wonder if he had gained a disciple or a daughter to raise now. In that case, he said that the academy had decided to give him a new room, and Yanlang would get that room. This made Erim jealous again, so she made a few more jokes with her new friend. After some more time watching the girls become better friends, he left. Despite not training much today, he felt more tired than usual. Thinking about his students, he was sure that Choi Erim and Meow would be his students. Soyeon Makema was training her physique and was far from receiving sword lessons. Sehyuk had no interest and was just training on his own. His doubt was whether these two would be enough to help with the disaster in 3 months. While he was pondering, the phone rang with a call from Adelia. He answered, asking what matters she had to discuss with him. The woman was now completely different from before. Even over the phone, she felt fear of her new master. Adelia's call was to confirm that she had done everything he asked and to take the opportunity to inform him. Our protagonist then advised her to recruit contractors to fight because in 3 months, a disaster would occur. Although this was very important information, Juhyeok simply said his sources were secret. He explained what the woman should do, and then Adelia asked a favor. Could Juhyeok speak well of her work to Lady Constellation? She was ignoring Adelia and not responding. The truth was that the girl said she needed to rest due to expending too much energy that day. But Adelia didn't need to know that, and Juhyeok said he would tell her everything. On another day during training, Yanlang asked for a break to catch her breath or else she would die. Despite this, Juhyeok praised the girl and said she was progressing much better than expected. To keep up the tradition of people interrupting during training, a woman entered the gym asking for Yanlang. This woman resembled Seal Yin from the White Lotus Academy, but it wasn't her. The woman then said that Yanlang's mother had come to fetch her personally, but instead of being happy, Meow was furious at her mother's presence. The protagonist said this was strange. He could have sworn that Seal Yin was her mother. Only now did the woman introduce herself as Seal Yeonhwa, the current leader of the Seal family, and because of that, she was now Yanlang's new mother. Now the protagonist said that Seal Ryan was this woman's younger sister and the leader of the White Lotus. Perhaps the names in the previous translation were wrong. The girl's mother said that her sister would contact her when Yanlang left the palace, but she didn't do so. The reason she might find out later, but the most important thing was to take her daughter back to the palace. The girl was trembling with her emotions and asked her mother, why take her after exiling her? Although she didn't understand her mother's reasons, Yanlang shouted that she didn't want to know anymore and wouldn't go back. The woman then said that rejecting Yanlang in the past was an order from the constellation, and the daughter should know that. Despite this explanation, the girl responded that she had never heard that from her mother. It was a rumor that the maids spread. The girls argued, with the mother insisting that the constellation ruled everything and that the new order was to bring Yanlang back. And at this time, the constellation was willing to recognize the girl. This didn't make sense to Meow. She only came here because of an order. The mother confirmed this with great coldness. The girl was trembling, trying to control her emotions, and then she responded with a firm no. Although the woman didn't seem to accept a negative answer, the daughter insisted that this place was Valhalla Academy, and outsiders couldn't enter and disrupt the training. Seo Yun had already expected this and was aware that she would need to use force. The woman concentrated energy in her mana and struck her daughter. Despite the strength of the attack, the girl defended against it completely. Not even the girl expected this reaction from her arrogant mother. If she was willing to break the rules, Yanlang said she wouldn't hold back and would forcibly expel her mother from the place. Even using her powerful attacks feared by the strongest adults, the woman defended herself with ease. She praised her daughter for getting stronger and threw her into the air, almost knocking the girl down. Mother and daughter engaged in intense combat while arguing about their relationship. This intense fight was watched by Choi Aram and the protagonist. Aram questioned whether it would be appropriate to call the head instructor, but the protagonist said that would cause a big commotion. Even though he didn't like that woman, it was better to let them fight. In that case, Choi Aram said that the kitten must be very frustrated with her family. Even though Aram didn't say it, we know that she also went through that with her family. Yanlang was fighting with all her strength to defeat her mother, and when she managed to land a powerful blow, the result wasn't good. Her mother froze her leg and said that this was the power of the family's constellation. The power of the Snow King is a blessing that only those recognized by him can use. If she returns now, she can make a contract and be accepted by the constellation. Our kitty doesn't want to return under any circumstances, and her mother is willing to do anything to take her back. Yanlang shouted that she wouldn't go back, even if it killed her, but her mother said the dead don't have opinions and approached to freeze her daughter's entire body. After she's unable to move, she will be taken away. The girl closed her eyes in fear, and then our legendary hero couldn't stay out of it any longer. He stopped the attack with a leg and his hands in his pockets. Yanlang didn't expect him to get involved in this. However, Juhyeok was furious, questioning why she would hurt her daughter. The woman hid her surprise and simply said that strangers shouldn't get involved in other people's parenting. This reminded our protagonist of Choi Aram's brother, who said the same thing. These annoying people. The woman couldn't understand how he managed to block her attack, and her mother was so affected. The only explanation is that his magic was stronger than the constellations. Our protagonist told Aram to take Yanlang away from here. The girl was against him getting involved in her problems like this, but she knew she couldn't defend herself with her leg immobilized like that. Anyway, Juhyeok said that a master couldn't stand by silently, watching his students get hurt. Seeing the kitten's admiration made Choi Aram uncomfortable. Will this girl steal my senpai? It was the first time the girl's mother heard about him being her daughter's master. It didn't make sense for a teenager to teach other teenagers. The woman questioned Juhyeok's motivations, but he simply said he didn't agree with the woman's methods. If they couldn't convince him with words, the woman decided she would defeat him, and then take her daughter. The protagonist thought that despite her appearance, this woman was as aggressive as her daughter. Moreover, their attacks were too strong to block without spending a lot of energy, so the best option was to dodge them. However, doing so caused the surrounding equipment to freeze and be damaged by the cold. Juhyeok first analyzed the effects of the attacks, and then said that she would have to pay for all of it before going back to China. She agreed to pay if he won the fight, and the protagonist decided that blocking was bad and dodging was useless, so the option was to do this. He kicked her arm with concentrated magic, dispersing the attack. Although it affected the woman, this was just to create an opening for the next strike. The next step was to create an opening in her abdomen with this, and the attack was so strong that something came out of the woman's mouth, and then she fell to the ground. Unlike her daughter, the woman didn't pass out from the attack, but it was enough to make our legendary hero the victor. Despite knowing her master's strength, Yanlang couldn't help but be impressed. The mother felt the same way, but the woman admitted her defeat, saying it wasn't over. She needed to take Yanlang because that was the constellation's wish, and even if she couldn't do it, others would come in her place. The daughter was frustrated by this. Her opinion didn't matter at all in the end. The mother hurt her feelings even more, saying yes, the constellations was the only thing that mattered. Our kitty was trembling again as she asked if she would have to fight every time because of this. She couldn't bear it anymore. This reaction from his student was the last straw for Juhyeok, so he coldly asked Seolien how he could meet the family's constellation. If it was an order from him, all he had to do was convince the constellation to give up on that order. For the first time, The woman was horrified. No one should be so stupid as to say that. She said that he could meet her when the family summoned her with magical energy stones, but that would never happen for him. The protagonist then said that it was necessary to touch the family relic to enter the mind realm where the constellation lived. Although just a student, the woman couldn't deny that he knew a lot. So he must know that going to the mind realm where the constellation has domain expansion is likely to crush his mind. Did he still want to face the constellation in her domain expansion? The protagonist said yes, so the woman accepted his terms, but for that, he needed to convince the other family members to authorize this decision. She said she would arrange the meeting in a week, but this seemed like an agreement that only benefited Juhyeok. If he lost, what would the condition be? The protagonist said he would accept the deal, and if he won, she would leave Yenlang alone for the rest of her life, and he would take care of her. And that was all. Seo Yeon couldn't help but think he was arrogant, so she accepted his terms. When the woman left the room, Juhyeok could no longer hide his fury toward her. So, a week later, it was known that the protagonist was facing the Frozen King constellation. They stared at each other, and you wouldn't believe how quickly things happened. Before that day arrived, something needed to be shown first. A few days earlier, in the academy dormitory, the protagonist and Yenlang went to the room where she would live. This room was large and luxurious, which made the girl acknowledge that it was more impressive than the Seo family's house. So she asked if she could really use this place all by herself. The protagonist said yes. Originally, this room was for him to use, so he could give it to her. This made the girl blush even more for a while. Yenlang then asked why he was doing so much for her. He asked if the training was too painful. Would she give up? This was just to change the subject, so he soon asked about the family's constellation. The kitty told him everything she knew about the Frozen King, which wasn't much because she had spent many years isolated from the family. All she knew was that the constellation didn't interfere in the family's affairs. She heard that some members didn't even know the constellation existed. That's why it was strange for him to order her to be taken. Yenlang asked again if he was doing all this for her just because she was now his disciple. Juhyeok said it wasn't just that. He really felt disgusted by the arrogance of people who used their status to pressure others. So that's why he got involved. Did it make her uncomfortable? Of course, she vehemently denied that she didn't mind. In fact, she had never received so much attention in her life. That's why she wanted to thank him. The protagonist questioned if there was any reason for the constellation to want Yenlang, but even she didn't know the reason. In that case, all he could do was accept things and confront the Frozen King. His student should rest now and leave everything to him. He would need her as a guide when they went to China. When he left the girl alone, she realized that her feline heart was almost exploding in her chest, and she had no idea why. In his room, the protagonist called Adelia to inform her that he had fought against the head of the Seo family. Her surprise almost made her fall backward. Curious, she asked him to explain the reason for the fight. The reason for the contact was that he needed the equipment that was destroyed to be replaced. Could she do that for him? Adelia said she could do anything for him now. As for information about the Seo family's constellation, Adelia said that it didn't involve itself in any family matters. It was passive about any activities in the outside world. The protagonist also asked if his student had awakened from her rest. According to Adelia, she remained silent. For a moment, Adelia wanted to ask Juhyeok something suspicious. She wanted to know if he wanted to know about her constellation's condition so he could tell her how well she had been serving him. He then said he changed his mind about her having done a good job so far. Adelia begged for 1,000 pardons and hung up. In the end, they didn't manage to get any information about that constellation. Barche then questioned his master, saying that Juhyeok was never one to ask questions first and hit later. That might be true, but it wasn't like he could have the same confidence he had when he was known as the strongest of all in the past. Barche then revealed something very important. When you go to the mind realm, the strength you have isn't that of your body but the strength of what you know. Among many explanations, Barche said that constellations have the same strength when they come to Earth, and normal humans have the same strength when they go to the mind realm. However, Juhyeok is different because his strength is a sum of 2 lives. So, a few days later, he went to the Seo family's mansion. Their leader didn't expect him to really come. She thought it was a bluff to make him run away. On the other hand, Juhyeok wasn't nervous at all and wanted to go straight to the sacred relic. Seo Yeon then asked him to follow her to the location, and Juhyeok asked his dear kitty to wait here until he finished. All she could do was wait for the result of this encounter. The room where the Frozen King's relic was kept couldn't be any different. The place was like a freezer that didn't consume electricity. Perhaps the family's fortune was related to a butcher shop. The woman picked up the box where the relic was kept and said she had been thinking a lot about what to ask for in return when Juhyeok lost. She suggested that he should become a slave to the family. Strangely, Juhyeok accepted and simply asked for the gloves. Upon touching the relic, he was transported to the altar of the Frozen King. Despite preparing for the meeting, the constellation had no idea he would have visitors. Juhyeok says that this man is not his disciple but seems familiar to him, and he wonders who he is. The constellation says, so it's him, a figure who is a threat to the Soul Clan. Juhyeok then wants to know who he is as well. The king readies his fist, saying that if he survives, they can talk. Juhyeok smiles, and suddenly, gigantic ice stalactites fly straight at him. They fall to the ground, and the king sees that Juhyeok is completely indifferent to the attack. He comments that this is impressive, and that Juhyeok used magic to jump further. The king introduces himself as the King of the North, as his real name has been lost over time. The king explains that he has been known by various names over the years and is now called the Chaotic Ice Demon. He says this while creating ice pillars around Juhyeok to block any possible escape. The king prepares for another attack and punches Juhyeok as the ice flies towards him. Juhyeok says this will be troublesome, and then draws his sword. The sword is familiar to the king, but Juhyeok breaks it and sends the ice back. The Ice King remarks that using his own ice is ridiculous since the ice and snow there are under his control. Juhyeok advances and tries to attack but is blocked with the palm of the hand and asks if the previous attack was to obscure his vision. The Ice King says it was a good idea but lacked power. Juhyeok asks if that's really it, and the king starts to tremble. Juhyeok then punches him in the stomach, releasing mana and sending the constellation flying away, right into its throne. The protagonist asks if it's satisfying to have a real fight. The Ice King grumbles and says that now he understands the magical attack and the sword, and asks if Juhyeok is the martial god. The protagonist confirms that it's a nickname given by his disciples. The constellation begins to chime and says it doesn't know him well, but it saw his power 300 years ago. We see a memory of him being attacked by many monsters. He managed to handle some but not enough and was determined to take as many as possible with him before dying. Then, the martial god arrived and cut through the entire army with one blow, leaving him in awe. The magical power felt is the same, even though the appearance has changed. He is clearly the same. Juhyeok asks if the constellation is not going to attack him, and he steps forward. The Ice King says he wanted to fight him at least once to see how far he would go. In the waiting area, Yenlang is a bit worried and sees her family members, all looking at her with disdain. She looks away, saying that this is why she didn't want to return to the family but came due to Juhyeok's request to be his guide. She starts to think, and some of her relatives come in, being introduced to her sisters Iron and Fanseo. Yenlang asks if they came to fight, but they say they came to see her, and Iron says that if it were to fight, they couldn't win against her. Yenlang says that if it's just to see her, they can stay with the rest of the family. But Iron says there were some misunderstandings, and wants to apologize personally. This makes Meow curious. She asks what she means by that, and Iron explains that after the fight with Yenlang, she never had a chance to talk to her and wanted to do so now, even if it's late. The sister was apologizing, so Yenlang shouted furiously, saying she was only doing it because she was afraid of her coming back. But the brother asked her to wait. He said it wasn't true. What happened was a big misunderstanding. The guy explained that every time they tried to contact Yenlang, their mother prevented them. And it wasn't just that. He said that keeping Yenlang out of training was also their mother's order. In other words, she just discovered that her estrangement from her siblings wasn't due to their jealousy or hatred. They were simply victims of their mother. But it wasn't that simple. She admitted she had been envious of her, which was true. But her pride was even greater, as having someone so strong in the family was amazing. They explained that they thought that way, and it was when their mother called them in the past that she forced them to stay away from Yenlang and keep her out of training. They explained that their mother was afraid that other clan members would support Yenlang as the new successor to lead the family. So, their mother planted the idea in everyone's head that Yenlang would be a threat and forced them to distance themselves from her. The siblings also mentioned that there was another issue. They never had any interest in becoming clan leaders. At this point, the mother meets the siblings and enters the room. I wanted to see more of Yenlong's reaction to this revelation, but instead, we see the protagonist's battle with the constellation. The guy was shooting ice arrows trying to hit his opponent. Obviously, he wasn't succeeding. Juhyeok managed to get close to the constellation, but before he could attack, the guy shot more ice arrows, forcing him back. However, they were fragile and easily broken, so he attacked again. For a while, he tested his enemy's attacks, but none were strong enough to cause damage. The constellation said it intended to freeze him completely, but the martial god didn't get his name for nothing. Juhyeok sincerely said he didn't expect to receive praise from anyone during the battle, but what he was really thinking was that if that person were so strong, he would remember them from his past life. So the protagonist speculated that he had gotten stronger while in this ice temple. Juhyeok thought this because if he had encountered someone with such potential, his past life would have been great for training him. These words made the constellation curious about what he meant. Our protagonist said it was simple. He was simply praising her. Therefore, he was worthy of seeing her sword in action. Being praised by the greater god was an honor, so in this case, she would reciprocate by fighting with her full power. Then, The two exchanged blows to see who had the more powerful attack. The constellation said she intended to surpass him, but that was nonsense. She couldn't even scratch him. While our protagonist's mind was in another dimension, his physical body remained still in the other world. The woman thought he was taking too long. Maybe the constellation was playing with him before defeating him. As she thought about the ways the constellation was winning this battle, she was surprised to see him return. She was shocked to see why he had suffered so much mental damage, but his body seemed so unharmed. So she asked what happened, and he simply answered that he had defeated the constellation. The AI woman responded that she didn't know he was the type to make jokes, but before she finished speaking, the constellation sent her a message saying he had all the respect for Juhyeok. Of course, she didn't understand the meaning of the message immediately, so she looked at him and wondered if it was really possible that this kid had defeated the constellation. As she began to accept this reality, she gradually lost her balance. The world didn't make sense. My life no longer made sense if my supreme leader, who guides my family, lost to a 16-year-old kid. While she was thinking all this, the protagonist put his hand on her shoulder and said they had a deal before, and now she had to keep her word, but they needed to make some adjustments to this agreement. When Juhyeok went to meet Yenlang, I realized I had made a mistake. The first was that it was their aunt who came to them before, not Yenlang's and the other's mother. My second mistake was thinking that all four of these girls were pretty enough for me to date. Then I remembered that this isn't exactly my type. Back to the focus. The leader of the White Lotus Academy said it was a pleasure to see Juhyeok again. But the protagonist didn't feel the same. He hadn't expected to see her there. Yenlang then asked if he had finished his business with the constellation. He replied that he had and would tell her about it on the way back. After all, it wasn't good to talk about it there with such hostile looks. Indeed, they didn't stay to chat. They simply left. And folks, on the way, Yenlang lamented everything that had happened. Since he had been so quick in facing the constellation, he must have lost badly. She continued with a sad look and said it must have been tough for him. The protagonist said it was true. In other words, he didn't disagree with the girl and told her he had won, and for that, Yenlang said he must now be a family slave due to that agreement. Yenlang then realized she had wronged the only person who tried to help her in years. Juhyeok knew very well that she was mistaken and found it amusing to see her reaction. Yenlang said she should have stopped him from risking so much to help her, and she heard from her aunt that her mother was a crazy and greedy woman who would do anything for power. Since she was young, she had been interested in becoming the matriarch of the family, which had always caused problems with her aunt. Even after becoming the clan leader, her greed didn't diminish. Her mother wanted to do everything to keep the position until the end of her life. She didn't want to maintain the tradition of passing the position to the next generations. That's why she kept the children under surveillance while manipulating everything from the shadows. Since she couldn't manipulate Yenlang, she decided to distance her from the clan. She couldn't understand her mother's greed, nor why the family's constellation shared the same thoughts. Juhyeok listened attentively while Yenlang recounted everything she had discovered. She found it funny how things had happened since she had never been interested in becoming the family leader. After listening a bit more, Juhyeok interrupted Yenlang, saying he wanted to let her talk until she revealed the truth, but it seemed she would never finish. The truth was that he had defeated the constellation. Yenlang also commented that she hadn't expected him to make jokes, but our protagonist stated he didn't joke about such things. Moreover, he asked if she remembered that all the confusion started because the constellation summoned her after Yenlang left the White Lotus Palace. She agreed, and then he mentioned that he found it very strange, as he had talked a lot with the constellation. Later, when he was unconscious, he had to be woken up very carefully. Then he asked why the constellation wanted Yenlang so much and discovered it was because the matriarch had requested protection for her youngest daughter. The truth was he didn't even know Yenlang's name. He was just following the matriarch's requests. In other words, the man had been manipulated by the matriarch all along. Imagine Yenlang's surprise upon hearing this. Her mother was so greedy that she managed to deceive the constellation, which was extremely important to the family, just to satisfy her own ambition. If Yenlang didn't like her mother before, she now had even more reasons to hate her. She ruined Yenlang's life and kept her away from her siblings because of it. Seeing the sadness, the girl was emotional, and the protagonist revealed that he had asked the constellation to cancel the contract with her mother. She was surprised to hear this and didn't understand the reason. The legendary hero explained it simply. If the woman went so far to gain power, the punishment she deserved for harming his disciple was losing that power. In other words, she no longer had the right to remain as the family leader. Now Yenlang didn't need to worry anymore. The girl blushed and thanked him so cutely that I felt emotional. She needed to thank him more, so she repeated her gratitude once more, louder, while hiding her face in and embarrassment. To her, this was the most amazing thing anyone had ever done for her in her life. When he said it was nothing much, it was obvious she would end up falling in love with her amazing master. As they walked back to the airport, someone was watching them. The masked person was talking to someone else, asking if they should continue following the two. The mysterious guy answered that it wasn't necessary anymore. Just look for this person's enemy. I wonder if this guy really thinks his presence wasn't noticed. They never learn. Then, another moment shows a hotel that seems abandoned. Several people gather for a meeting and all appear to be from the same organization, judging by their attire. The meeting's topic is that their constellation ordered a change of plans. Previously, the target was that teenager, but now the order has changed to find the enemies of that teenager. The curious woman asks what kind of person Juhyeok is, since he was the only one to find him. The man explains that he followed and observed Juhyeok for quite some time, and he is definitely a strange guy. Initially, he gathered all the information he could, but none was useful. The only solid information he found was that he was an orphan and grew up in an orphanage, but there was no more information, and he can guarantee the information was true because it came from reliable sources. The guy explains that he followed all the constellation's orders to track the guy. Later, Juhyeok defeated the leader of the CO family in China. So, after that, the order was changed from eliminating Juhyeok to finding Juhyeok's enemies and eliminating them. Then the constellation asks the men without the bloodstone if they are ready. They say yes. Then everyone places the bloodstone on the table. It seems two lazy people put damaged stones, but that's not important, just my observation. The masked man informs his constellation that he found Juhyeok's enemies, the Ventrix, the Insinja, and the Irius X. The constellation listens in silence. He also mentions that the Ventrix have gone from being Juhyeok's enemies to his allies recently. Additionally, there are rumors that a malicious group called Break Jang is now after Juhyeok. They wonder how this kid manages to gather so many enemies. Before they could continue the conversation, the constellation gives new orders. Eliminate all these enemies. I believe you've figured out that this constellation must be a disciple of our great legendary hero. When Juhyeok returned to Korea, his phone was full of messages from Choi Aram asking to speak with him. She wanted to inform him that she would miss fencing classes because she needed to go to her hometown to fetch something. That's why she wouldn't be able to attend the fencing classes. Juhyeok pondered what could be so important for her to fetch. Maybe it was the Choi family relic, which would be great, as the family's constellation might be one of his disciples. The protagonist was doing his daily training with the girls while thinking about various things. I don't know how he manages to concentrate with so many beauties around him. This master has an incredible focus. Juhyeok was wondering if the White Lotus Academy also had a constellation. Now that he was in contact with the director, he could check if there were any other disciples of his. While he was thinking about all this, the protagonist was surprised by an unexpected visitor. He had never seen this person before, so he asked who he was and what he wanted. The guy said that, first, there were many eyes watching, so they should talk in a more private place. In that case, the protagonist knew where they could have a secret conversation. As he went to the location, he instructed the two students to fight each other as part of their training. He left them there arguing about who was stronger, and found it very entertaining. In the hallway, he told the guy to reveal himself. Start talking! The man with the cat mask got straight to the point, and said he was there to deliver a message. This is interesting. What does he have to say? The guy then said to check the message itself. It was a letter sent by the real owner of the market. Juhyeok asked if it was the constellation known as the ruler of the shadows. The answer was yes, and this letter was delivered to several people. The constellation was looking for a specific person. If he understood the meaning of the letter and responded correctly, the constellation would be waiting for him. Juhyeok opened the letter to see what it said. Barche, who lives in his sword, commented that he didn't recognize those letters. Juhyeok explained that they were letters he had created. Even his disciples knew these letters. Now I ask you, did anyone else think this looked like cat ears? I did. That same night, the protagonist was heading to the market. He had made an agreement with the white-haired teacher so that he could leave during the academy week. As he walked, his constellation asked why he created special characters and what the point of that was. He simply said it was part of his training or something like that. Then, he calmly went to the secret door and entered. There was the door leading to the market. Upon opening the door again for the second time, he thought the place was quite familiar. Maybe it was because of the purple sun shining in the sky. Actually, I think it's a moon. Our protagonist just said it reminded him of the sky 300 years ago. He was surprised by the masked man asking if he was there because of the letter. Juhyeok said yes and asked where he should go now. The guy asked him to follow him to the meeting place. The place was the market headquarters. The view from the top of the building is excellent. Those large windows are great. As he observes, he notices that the cat is not there and, moreover, there are very strange buildings ahead that all seem to be made of paper. He doesn't remember seeing that last time he was here. Finally, the cat approaches him and asks what the answer to the letter is. Juhyeok says it's not a question that makes sense, but what she must want is the answer. He then then asks for a piece of paper and a pen. Up to this point, the cat mask thinks this is a joke. This candidate was called only on a whim. It makes no sense for a 16-year-old to be the person his master is looking for. When the protagonist delivers the answer, the man looks at it and cannot understand. It looks like the same writing, but he does not know the meaning of these words. Juhyeok then says that it means no. The constellation asks what his response was to saying no. Has he gone mad? The cat mask can barely understand his words. The guy says that the protagonist has been verified as the person the master knows, and for her sanity, he must meet her as soon as possible. In that case, they touch his staff. This is the constellation's relic. They know how it works. Just touch the object, and he will be teleported to the constellation's mental realm. I doubt you were expecting it to be a girl. Now, what you might not have known is that it would be a different girl. She says that even though his appearance has changed, his magical power is still the same. How long has it been? Luminous. Everyone, look at this insane girl. Who here likes a crazy girl? The girl soon bows to her master, saying she is very happy to see him again. Even though she is crazy, she cannot help but show respect for the most important person in her life. Humbly, he tells her to rise. There's no need for so many formalities. She asks if he really remembers those words. And of course, our protagonist does not disappoint and says he could not forget something like that. He then recalls the first time he met the girl. Like the others, she was shackled, a slave. He and his first disciple found the girl. Looking closely, he realized she was not like anyone else. Her eyes showed a trauma deeper than anything he had ever seen. That girl did not know any kind of language or writing. She had never been taught. She didn't even know how to live in society. She didn't want or couldn't learn the world's language, so he created an easier alphabet specifically for her to learn. The girl is happy he remembers. It was thanks to that she learned to write and then managed to learn other languages. Then, he explains that the message said, "I miss the master. If you see me again, will it be to marry me?" And therefore, the answer is no. The crazy girl asks why not. The reason is that he doesn't have time for that. There are more important things to discuss now. The current world is as dangerous as it was 300 years ago. They need to do something about it. Ignoring his response, she asks if he saw the paper building outside. "Oh, the money note building, I saw it." "Why?" The crazy girl responds that it is a gift for the master. He can live there from now on. Of course, he refuses, and the girl questions the reason. No, she persistently asks why. Now he remembers that she couldn't be left unsupervised for too long or she would go crazy. So, how must it have been to be alone for 300 years? He hopes she hasn't lost her mind. For moments like this, he created a special technique. Juhyeok extends his legendary finger and gives a legendary flick to Luminous' forehead, telling her to control herself. The protagonist asks her to keep calm and not get too excited. The girl asks if it's because he didn't like the gift. It was what he wanted before. He remembers he wanted a building full of money, not a building made of money. But really, in the past, while training the girls, he used to say he always dreamed of living in a building made entirely of money. His student, with a screw loose in her head, heard that back then and seems not to have forgotten. He even said it wasn't quite his dream. It was just because they were poor. So having money would be great. He told her that later, when there was peace in the world, living buried in a pile of money would be great for them. So they should train hard and strengthen themselves to bring peace to the world. At that time, the girl said she would fulfill his dreams, but he saw it as childish. So, back in the present, Luminous said she couldn't fulfill his dream while he was alive, but she was fighting to fulfill it even after his death. The girl asks why he doesn't want to accept the gift she made for him. He ignores this and just asks if she knew he would reincarnate, and therefore, made a building. The girl responds that she received a notification informing that the master would be reincarnated at some point. The protagonist begins to fear the girl's reaction, as she starts to go crazy again, saying she couldn't wait any longer for this moment. He really feared her madness. She was crazy. He says again that it's not the time for this and asks her to calm down. After some time, they talk more and she returns to normal. He tells her about the threat of the destruction pie that might appear again. The girl gets nervous, saying it's frustrating. He explains that he is now a teenager and lives at Valhalla Academy, and therefore refuses to live in a building made of money. The girl is sad, as her master is rejecting her gift, but asks him to extend his hand for a moment. Even though he refuses her most important gift, at least with this he should keep. This ring will grant access to the entire market, as if he were the owner of the place. After all, everything she did was for the master. He remembers that he has been receiving many rings lately. He bids farewell to the girl and leaves. Did Mr. Cat Mask expect this? While the meeting was happening, after some time, he received a question on his system window. Has that person left? He answers yes. He has returned to Valhalla Academy. The constellation was silent for a moment and then replied, "You must buy Valhalla Academy for me." Obviously, the staff wondered if the master was crazy. She gave the great ring of the constellation's owner to that kid and now wants to buy the school where he studies. What could be the reason? He took courage and asked the constellation what her relationship with Juhyeok was. The girl promptly answered that he is her sky, which means he is everything to her. Hyeon-oh shows another location, a mysterious island, where a man was beating up several people. The people losing their teeth were employees of a criminal organization, and the man doing this was named Logan. He was furious, destroying everything in his path and asking who was responsible for attacking his son. He asked questions and killed several men, eliminating them forever. Interestingly, the masked men were there observing, as they were ordered to hunt down the protagonist's enemies, but ended up seeing someone else doing it for them. This is the great American hero, furious because his son was attacked during a test at Valhalla Academy. He was there to catch the leader of this organization, but it was too late, as the man had already been abducted by a mysterious constellation. The guy was defending himself from the invader in his territory and ended up there without knowing how. He didn't even find out how he died. His heart was simply disintegrated. Maybe now he fits better with someone who harms others, someone without a heart. The Lion constellation is concerned about this mental space, ensuring that if the constellation wants, he will not die. For he said that dying would be too easy. The guy recognizes the appearance of this constellation and asks if it is the constellation of the Juhyeok clan. The man with the goat mask confirms his identity. His name is Juhyeok, the guardian of the Juhyeok clan. In that case, the villain questions why he is being attacked by someone like him. The constellation explains that the attack he is suffering is based on someone else, as they attacked his son. He recognizes that the man is Logan. The constellation and the guy discuss the change of targets. Initially, the goat mask wanted to kill Juhyeok. In summary, this constellation wanted to kill all the people said to be the strongest, because, to him, there is only one person who could be called the strongest, and he lived 300 years ago. The target he had this time is literally the strongest, so he decided to defeat all those who tried to harm the target. The villain realized that arguing against this constellation is pointless. He will certainly die there, so he needs to fight back. Perhaps he can survive this dimension. He tried to attack with all he had, but it was impossible to fight back against the constellation in its soul dimension. His attack destroyed the throne, but he couldn't even perceive the constellation's presence. In the soul realm, the owner's control is absolute. He wouldn't lose fighting there. Once again, his heart was racing, and I don't know if this was literal or not, as the sensation of death repeated itself, as if being annihilated was too quick. Now, we return to the next morning, at Valhalla Academy. The protagonist has just gotten out of the shower, and while checking his phone, sees in the news that a criminal organization has been completely destroyed. Barche asks if these people were related to the assassins who invaded the Academy's competition test. He agrees, it was that organization. It seems he won't need to look for these people anymore. He admits that he is only there because of the system, and when everything is resolved, he won't need to stay. Meanwhile, we see the headmaster of Valhalla Academy receiving an unexpected visit. The Cat Mask, a man from the black market, came to make a deal. He is straightforward and offers to buy the school. The headmaster, who is also the owner of the academy, asks who he is, if he is really the owner of the black market. The Cat Mask confirms his identity, and says he must be aware that the offer is real. The headmaster explains that he cannot sell the academy because the place was created for the benefit of the students, not to profit from money. The Cat Mask snaps his fingers, and a sum of money appears on the table. The man reiterates that principles are not above money. In the past, he was a fighter and saw the threat of monsters taking over humanity. After many years, he decided to create a school to train future defenders of Earth, and says he does not intend to change the Academy's motto or the teaching system. The Cat Mask snaps his fingers again, and more money appears on the table. The man repeats that money is not an issue and snaps his fingers continuously until the room is filled with money. At this point, it is revealed that the 62-year-old man is officially retired. He asks the headmaster to take good care of the school. The sign that read, "Owner of the Academy," is removed and replaced with that of a new owner. Now, the constellation is the owner of the place. Her first order is to install an extremely powerful surveillance system. The girl is determined to protect her master from any enemies who might attack him. When I say that crazy girls are capable of anything, you should really be careful with those girls you know out there. I speak from personal experience that it's dangerous. Now, you'll never know if I'm the crazy girl, or if I've ever had one in my life. Our protagonist, coming back from another day of classes, wonders why things feel strange. Before he could think more about it, Choi approaches him. "Teach me fencing!" That's a lie. She wasn't there to ask for fencing lessons like always, but for a normal conversation. She asks if he noticed the odd atmosphere at the school today, and says she wants to show him something during training. Later, in the training arena, everyone is eager to see what she will show. Choi Aram takes a sword out of her backpack and explains that she brought it from her hometown. Initially, he doesn't understand her intention, but soon realizes the sword is emitting a strong energy. Suddenly, Makima is very surprised to see that the relic Aram is holding is the Choi Jin family relic. How did Aram get it? The girl calmly explains that after passing the family's test, she became the successor to be the new leader of the family. Makima understands the importance but states that family relics should not be given to a student, only when someone assumes the throne. Despite this, Aram says she doesn't care about those norms and will use the relic in her training. Juhyeok, not surprisingly, is curious and asks to touch the relic. Makima is furious with him, saying one should not ask to touch sacred relics in that manner. However, Aram, who may not refuse any request from her master, hands over the sword for him to inspect more closely. Juhyeok finds the energy of the sword familiar, and while trying to understand, his consciousness is sent to the realm of a constellation. There, a man with his back turned reveals himself as the constellation of the Choi Jin family. He mentions that it has been a long time since he saw his dear older brother. I think the protagonist is similar to my father. He goes out on the street and knows everyone. I don't even know my neighbor's name. It seems that our protagonist has found another of his disciples. It is no wonder that the fencing that Choi Aram learned in his family is so familiar to him. They were the techniques of one of his disciples. The constellation admits that he did his best to teach his technique to his employer. If he noticed the similarity, it is because he did a good job. But in any case, the protagonist says that it is very different from the fencing he knew. This is no wonder. His student says that nowadays people prioritize magical power much more than training their bodies. So, anyone who taught him the complete technique would be putting his body at risk by overloading it. He says that he did not know that the master had reincarnated in the body of a high school teenager. This is different from the other girls, so the protagonist asks if he did not receive any notification window or something like that. His former student confirms that he did not know anything and did not receive anything. This leaves our protagonist confused. So why did that lunatic receive a notification? Besides, Barche also knew that he would be reincarnated. Anyway, it's great to see his boy so grown up. His former student must have been happy, but he doesn't admit it. He started to think now that he doesn't remember his own name anymore. That's strange. Besides, he never told his master his name in the past. All he did was challenge him. Guys, it seems that unlike the girls, this guy doesn't have a sad past. The constellation says that he doesn't remember his own name, and now he's known as the constellation. Before he could say the name, Juhyeok interrupted him and said that he doesn't need to say it, he'll keep calling him boy. Just like it was in the past. The protagonist reminds me of Kratos with his son. The constellation doesn't know if he's happy or angry about this, but he also doesn't know if it makes sense for him to be called boy now that he's this age. While I say no, Donkey keeps thinking about some things about the protagonist, remembering the past. 300 years ago, the boy was challenged while he was walking with his first two students. The reason is that the protagonist was known as the strongest guy in that region, so if they voted, the boy would become stronger. Of course, the protagonist's students were furious and wanted to kill anyone who interfered with their master. At that time, the protagonist asked, why does he like to fight so much? And his reason is that he wanted to become stronger and create an invincible fencing style, because only then could he defend his family and teach his own family to defend themselves. At that time, he found the boy very interesting and decided to face him. And of course, he did not measure his strength. He says that the boy was very inconvenient because he asked to challenge him every week when he recovered. The guy says that if Juhyeok had lost at least once, this would not have happened. This makes no sense to Juhyeok. Thanks to his advice, the boy was able to create his incredible fencing technique. Juhyeok asks if that was the flame of the invincible sword. He says yes. Our protagonist says that if he had become his disciple in the past, he would have monitored him closely. So that means he knew Juhyeok before. But it seems that our legendary hero did not accept men as students. Or maybe he only accepts slaves without salvation. Thinking about this, the protagonist thinks that the notifications about him were only sent to those who were his disciples. The boy was not, and therefore he must not have received anything. As he thought about it, the boy said that it must be fate that he casually touched the family heirloom that he belongs to. This means that fate allowed the constellation to challenge him once again. Maybe he can have his first victory. Our protagonist is kind and says that he could not refuse a request from him. Grateful to fate, the boy decides to use everything he has for this fight. Needless to say, Juhyeok always uses everything he has in a fight. He is the type who to kill a cockroach, sets the entire house on fire to ensure his victory. So the constellation went all out and seemed very strong. But then we see Juhyeok returning to his body smiling. I can't believe he lost. The protagonist hands the sword back to Choi Aram and tells her very intensely to take good care of it. He tells her that her constellation is a good boy, she should practice her fencing and communicate more with him. Then we see the result of the fight. The boy was on the ground while saying that this guy never made sense. Meanwhile, at Valhalla Academy, it is shown that the Shue family is in China. The elders gather with the representative of the White Lotus Academy. The woman did not know why the three elders had summoned her, so she asks what they want. They called her here because they need to choose someone to replace her as quickly as possible. However, they say it is tradition that the leader of the White Lotus Academy cannot become the matriarch. In other words, does she have someone to suggest as the new leader? They ask this but make it clear that the recommended person must be more powerful than the deposed former matriarch. The elders themselves criticize her for using her position to maintain her own influence rather than for the good of the family. The woman thinks deeply about it and then says she has an idea. She recommends someone, but the name is not revealed. The scene cuts to Yenlang training. The girl is about to face a fencing practice. Choi Aram is extremely fast and almost hits the girl, but Yenlang manages to defend herself. Once again, she prepares to attack but retreats from Yenlang. The girl realizes that crazy person's attacks were incredible. Frustrated by her power, she decides it is her turn to attack, but Aram continues to block her strikes with ease. She mentions that she has recently become much stronger than before. Maybe it's thanks to this sword or her master's training? The protagonist had instructed to avoid using magical power, relying only on physical skills in combat. Moreover, Aram cannot draw her sword from its sheath during the training. Teach me Yenlang says she doesn't mind if her opponent draws her sword, but the protagonist does not believe this and makes it clear that he doesn't want to see his student with cuts. Juhyeok also questions why Makema is just watching, since last time she had disagreements with Yenlang. Actually, Makema is here out of curiosity. In the last fight with Yenlang, Makema was defeated and didn't pose a real threat to her. Now, seeing Yenlang being pressured by Choi Aram is frustrating. How did this girl become so strong so quickly? Makema wants to confirm if she can truly defeat Yenlang. Aram warns Juhyeok and Yenlang that if she draws her sword, Yenlang will surely lose one of her 7 lives. Being underestimated in this way makes Yenlang furious. She rushes to attack Aram, angry at being called kitten. Stop calling me kitten! Aram maintains her stance the entire time, so their attacks clash against each other. The impact of the attacks creates waves of energy throughout the room. Juhyeok does not feel pressured, but Makema struggles to maintain the same calm. The two girls in combat have surpassed her in many aspects. Even using her sword with force, Yenlang could not overcome Aram. Using her agile legs, she almost hit Choi Aram's face but couldn't land a direct blow. Yenlang couldn't hit Aram directly using only physical strength. All her attacks were blocked or dodged by Aram. Many thoughts crossed Yenlang's mind. She had seen Aram fight several times with Juhyeok, and her moves weren't as fast and strong. Before she could think more about it, Aram attacked again with a precise fencing technique. Yenlang managed to dodge, but it wasn't enough. Even being close to the attack caused pain in her abdomen. Teach me fencing even praises Yenlang, saying she is good at dodging. Despite her confidence in her absolute strength, Yenlang admits to herself that she can't continue like this or she will be defeated. She decides to prepare to receive the next strike and put everything into a counterattack. Aram then attacks directly at Yenlang's shoulder. Yenlang blocks the attack with her hands and finally manages to get close to Aram. "Nani? If the sword had been unsheathed, you wouldn't have done that, kitten." Yenlang probably broke a few of Aram's teeth with her attack. It was a direct hit that even left a mark on her chin. Choi Aram was definitively defeated in the training. It was the end of the duel, and Yenlang was panting after giving it her all. Even so, Aram was not completely defeated by the blow. She stood up, determined not to give up. Juhyeok then ends the duel, making it clear that the training is over. He made it clear that both were injured and should not exceed their limits during training. Juhyeok seems proud to see how Aram has progressed. She made a contract with the constellation Juhyeok knew in his past life and has been communicating a lot with Kiddo. Because of this, she has improved greatly. Now your other student, Yenlang, appears more injured, and he is equally concerned about her. The girl plays tough in front of her master at all times, but the truth is, the situation was dangerous. She explains that if she had received the blow a bit further back, she wouldn't have been able to block it and would have been injured. I bet you, watching, understand the concept of torque applied here. Yenlang admits to herself that the girl has become much stronger than before and is sure it is related to the relic. This makes her think about her own family's relic, which is quite convenient, since we recently saw that her family is unsure about who will be the next leader to take the relic. The day comes to an end and night approaches. At some point, the protagonist is taken to the mysterious zone and meets the red-haired woman. She called him to reveal the exact location of the next appearance. She reveals that the appearance will be in Sejong City and will occur in exactly 3 weeks. The protagonist notes that last time she mentioned 3 months, so she was correct about the time frame. This indicates that 2 months have passed since he began training with the girls. He asks what he should do with the monsters that escaped from the labyrinth while he is there. The woman, concerned, asks if he hasn't gathered the team as she instructed. Juhyeok reflects on this carefully. He has some people in mind but isn't sure if they are suitable for the job. After reflecting, he says he has a team to help, but he doesn't seem very confident. They discuss strategies and the best way to destroy the labyrinth as quickly as possible. Juhyeok asks if they should send more people in advance. The woman clarifies that he should focus only on destroying the labyrinth's boss and nothing else. He disagrees with this and decides to use the ring to focus on destroying the labyrinth as quickly as possible. After discussing further, she takes a purple stone and gives it to the protagonist, explaining that it is a disposable teleportation crystal. If he imbues the crystal with mana, he will be teleported here. This leaves Juhyeok in doubt. Why to this location? Can't she just call him here whenever she wants? The red-haired woman confirms but explains that there are limitations to knowing what happens outside this location. She plans to keep all her focus on the labyrinth's movements, so it would be good if he had a way to escape. It's not clear why she is giving him this, but having an extra escape route is not bad. She snaps her fingers and says they will meet again in 3 weeks. The next day, we see the protagonist walking down the street, pondering what to do. He wonders if he should contact Adelia Ventrick and ask her to send contractors to the location in advance. Additionally, he needs to get a day off for the disaster. He calls Professor Lilia to request the day off, but when she answers, he nearly goes deaf from the shouting. The woman says she is in trouble. After calming down, she explains that she was fired from the academy and that it is terrible. Despite the woman's drama, Juhyeok simply says he understands. The woman then asks why he is being so cold with her. Juhyeok explains that if Lilia was fired, it's because she deserved it, so it's fair. The woman does not believe what she is hearing and claims that, although she seems clumsy with him, she is an excellent instructor in her job. Lilia explains how seriously she takes her work, and indeed, the protagonist cannot disagree. This makes him find her dismissal strange at this point in the academic year. The professor also finds it very strange and comments on the sudden change in the academy's director. This is the first time our legendary protagonist hears about it. What really catches his attention is that, if the professor was fired, he won't be able to get days off easily now. Therefore, he decides to go to the director's office. The professor is moved but insists that he doesn't need to do this for her. Ignoring her, he simply hangs up the phone, determined to go. As soon as he hangs up, Yenlang sends him messages asking about the professor's dismissal. This catches him by surprise. These things don't make sense. Why are people around him being punished without explanation? Not knowing what's going on, he decides to go to the academy director. When he arrives, he is surprised by the situation. The masked man bought the market. The man explains that he actually bought the market, but that everything is controlled by his constellation, to which he is devoted. So why did he expel Yenlang and Professor Lilia? Juhyeok asks. The man explains that it was an order from his constellation. It commanded him to identify any problems and expel those people from the school. He identified these women as problems for Juhyeok and expelled them. Furthermore, he also plans to expel someone named Choi Aram. Juhyeok agrees that she is a problem for him too. The protagonist says no and asks to have everyone brought back to the academy, explaining that he doesn't want these people to be punished because of him. It is surprising that Luminous accepts the request, given that everything will be reversed. Juhyeok then asks why the cat bought the academy. The man explains that it was another order from his constellation. Additionally, the protagonist refused to live in the money market, so Luminous decided to buy the academy where he lives to connect it to the market. Now, he can have access to the place he always wanted to give as a gift to him. Basically, he connected one of the rooms of Valhalla Academy to the black market, allowing authorized people to access it. Despite how bizarre this may seem, the protagonist reflects on the matter and asks if the director can do anything in the school. Since the answer is yes, he would like to ask a favor of the director. Then, we see that, 3 weeks later, in Sejong City, things have heated up. Monsters have invaded the city and are destroying everything. Goblins are attacking people and destroying vehicles, while stone golems are even more terrifying. One of Valhalla Academy's students lives in this city, and was there on vacation. I can't believe even monsters are committing crimes. Things are bad even in other worlds. Juhyeok saves a girl from a goblin attack and defeats the creature with a powerful punch. The woman is grateful to be saved, but he doesn't seem satisfied. The weight of the creatures is real. He feels that things here are scarier than in training. Despite the fear, he will face it and save as many people as he can. While deciding what to do, 2 crazy girls pass by him, competing to see who can cause more destruction. We return to an earlier moment, still at the academy. The new president has introduced himself to the girls. Makema, the most experienced, asks why such a drastic change in the country's most important academy was not reported. For him, The answer is simple. He simply did not want it to happen. The reason for revealing himself now is that the Black Cat expects to work with Makima in the future. The protagonist explains that he is there to suggest the creation of a new department. It is a special class where students will have the autonomy to engage in external activities, without the need to follow the traditional classroom instruction. The question is, do they want to be the first people in this special class? Yenlang says it doesn't change anything for her, as she doesn't attend normal classes. Juhyeok acknowledges this, and still wanted to invite her. As a request from her beloved master, the girl cannot refuse. Choi didn't think much about it, and immediately accepted. Makima is the only one with a bit more critical sense. She wanted to understand things better before accepting. First, is the director, the Black Cat, the same owner of the black market? The answer is simple, yes. So why is he interested in buying the academy? It doesn't make sense for the owner of a clandestine market to be the president of such an important institution. How did he get the approvals? How did he manage to do all this? She has many doubts about this man. Additionally, she wonders how this man has so many important connections without a powerful family. Our protagonist gets straight to the point and asks if she will join the special department. The answer is obvious. She likes to think things through, but she also cannot refuse his request. She just needs to understand better what she is getting into. The director explains the conditions for forming this special department, which offers more freedom to this class. They will be exempt from normal classes for being more advanced. However, they will have to participate in tests and exams that require public exposure. Initially, our protagonist was not satisfied, but the man explained that this was necessary to ensure all the privileges he requested. There are a few more criteria, the most important being that the students must be strong enough to be recognized by other students and teachers. He explains that placing the strongest students in this special class and not having them attend classes would be a loss. Therefore, they are required to participate in some public activities that promote the academy's image to society. In the end, there were several conditions they must meet to get what he wants. After explaining all of them, Juhyeok asked if the girls had changed their minds, and none of them refused, of course. In this case, the special class of the protagonist's girls is now formed. Back in the present, we see the special combat class and training at Valhalla. Juhyeok did not expect to find Sehyuk here. He hadn't seen Sehyuk at the academy for a while. The boy explains that he came to the city for the weekend because his family is from there. He was enjoying a nice weekend when, suddenly, chaos erupted. Sehyuk also has questions. Why are the academy students in this city at this moment? The protagonist does not answer directly. He orders Choi and Yenlang to get ready, and they understand that it is to demonstrate practically why they are there. The two girls and he move towards the creatures while the other two observe. The monsters, patiently, wait for people to prepare for the fight. The only problem for the monsters is that this cannot be considered a real fight. When Juhyeok swings his sword, even the stone monsters seem to be made of butter. He easily eliminated all the monsters that were nearby. His students saw everything up close and even the girls couldn't help but be scared by so much power. Sehyuk already knew that this guy was strong, but it seems that every day it's getting more absurd. One of the Ventric family members was with him, and came to the protagonist with information. He discovered an area 5 kilometers from here where the monsters are coming from. The protagonist questions the position of the Ventric family agents. They are evacuating the civilians from the area. Something that intrigues Juhyeok is that the Ventric constellation hasn't awakened since the last time. Juhyeok asks the man named Mojiri, and he says that the constellation lady remains silent. His concern is that it's been 3 months since then, and he doesn't know if something happened to her. At least he has this sword with him. He wanted to have a contract with his other disciple too. Juhyeok orders the Ventrics to stop playing dress up with capes and show themselves while helping with the evacuation. This will help improve their reputation. The guy can't disagree with the wise advice of this guy who has authority over the head of the Ventric family. They decide on a plan and then go to the center of the calamity. The two strongest girls must defeat the monsters and save the citizens. Makima must help with the escort with Sehyuk. She didn't like being paired with this muscle-bound brain. These are the orders. They must go now. After some time they arrived at the place where the entrance to the labyrinth should be. The guy confirms that this is the place, and that they must make a plan to eliminate the monsters from the entrance. If they work together they can clear the way. Our protagonist admits that this would be the most sensible thing to do. However, it will take too long, and so he has a better idea. He will jump right from here and defeat everyone. Mojiri even tries to stop the MC from doing this crazy thing. As strong as these monsters are to the people of the time, our protagonist is simply the real monster to these monsters. The creatures have no chance to retaliate against his blows, as they are all fatal. He jumps into the air and in less than a breath he cuts through the air. The power of the attack sweeps away all the demons in front of him at once. Mariji can't keep his mouth shut when he sees this guy. There is no logic for a teenager to be stronger than a constellation. Our protagonist made a contract with a constellation for the first time. Luminous gave his abilities to him. It wasn't difficult for him to clear everything in front of him and reach the entrance to the labyrinth. Juhyeok also can't forget that he needs to wear this ring when entering and defeating the boss of the labyrinth. In that case, It's better to put it on now so he doesn't forget. And that's how he entered the labyrinth. Something so significant was happening on the other side of the world. And meanwhile, at the Ventric house in England, Adelia was comfortably in her office. Her heart was racing as she confirmed that Juhyeok's information about the calamity was true. Not even the South Korean government had noticed the situation in time. She no longer doubts Juhyeok's decisions. If he said he would face the calamity alone, she cannot disagree. However, she is worried. What if her constellation awakens and finds out something bad happened? To Adelia's surprise, her constellation finally awakened and made contact. The first thing it wanted to know was how much time had passed since it had fallen asleep. Amazing constellation? Adelia recounts that about 3 months have passed since that moment. The constellation reflects on this and then asks, "Where is my master?" It's always shocking for Adelia to hear that her master's master is Juhyeok. She informs that he is on the battlefield now, fighting against a mysterious calamity. Inside the labyrinth, the protagonist was fighting casually, so Barche asked what style of fencing he was using with that sword. His response is that he wasn't doing anything special, just attacking without thinking too much. But Barche says that this is a style of combat that his former disciples used in the past. It's called wishing. For the protagonist, it's strange to think that his disciples even turned this into a fencing technique. More importantly, Juhyeok says that this dungeon is larger than he expected. He then uses his magic to locate himself in the area. It's a mana detection ability, and he hopes to find the dungeon's core with it. Normally, the core of the dungeon is in the same area as the boss, and as he expected, it seems to be in that direction. He mentions that it would be much faster if he did something like this. He channels energy into his sword and makes a cut in the ground. The structure begins to collapse, and as it completely cracks, he falls down to the lower level. As expected, this monster with cockroach antennae is the dungeon's boss and was on the lower level. The dungeon boss looks furious and prepares to attack. Unlike him, the protagonist remains calm and confident. His weapon, a spear, offers an advantage in long-range combat. He also notes that he needs to destroy the dungeon core, and to get there, he has to go through this monster. He opts for a counterattack rather than trying to win with a direct blow in a skill-based fight. The monster, facing him, decides to attack. With the spear aimed directly at his heart, the protagonist easily dodges and comments that the monster is making things too easy for him. It seems these words made the creature furious. It attempted a long-range attack with its spear but still couldn't hit him. At this moment, the protagonist was assessing the creature's attack abilities. Then, when the monster tries to attack him again with piercing strikes, Juhyeok decides to defend himself to test the strength of the humanoid monster. He defends all attacks, finding it annoying how the creature keeps its distance with its long weapon. The monster tried a huge variety of attacks, attempting to hit him from an even greater range, but nothing worked. The protagonist always evaded. The creature used its spear to throw stones from the ground at the protagonist, but Juhyeok continued to dodge or defend. The creature tried to get close and attack at close range, but even though it was powerful, its attack was blocked. Possibly, the monster was getting irritated with its enemy and threw him away. Juhyeok remained calm, analyzing his enemy without saying anything more. It even crossed Barch's mind to question whether Kim Hyun was feeling the pressure. The reason for this was behind him. It was to separate that guy from the stone, just in case he ended up doing something unintended. Determined to use the ability Luminous had given him, Juhyeok decided to attack for the first time. Upon realizing this, the monster became alert. Whatever the attack was, it would be prepared to defend. In less than a second, the protagonist surpassed the monster, which didn't even notice the attack. In fact, the boss was confident he had struck his spear. The reality was that the enemy was sliced with a slight delay. When the effect finished charging, the boss was cut into pieces and then defeated. Juhyeok calmly watched his opponent being eliminated. He was curious about what would happen next. His ring began to glow, and then absorbed the energy that had come from the dungeon boss's body. He deduced that the ring absorbed the name, as previously mentioned by the woman. Juhyeok asks Barche about what he mentioned earlier regarding being pressured by this adversary. Before continuing his goal, he notices that the boss's spear was left behind. He then picks it up and questions why it wasn't absorbed or disappeared like the rest. Not understanding what happened, he decides to take it with him. Then, we see a mysterious tree with a door. Possibly within this place, a man came to inform the dungeon master that the disaster had ended. The creature in the shadows asks how many days it took. The answer was surprising, only 2 hours. And so, the question arises about how long the last disaster lasted. The man informs that it was 5 days. This question was merely to highlight that this time was too fast. What happened? The dungeon master asks if the level of these people increased too much. It must be the fault of those who became constellations. Now, he wants to know if anyone stood out during the event. The subject replies that the dungeon appeared and disappeared so quickly that he didn't understand what happened. He still doesn't know. The dungeon master simply orders them to advance their plans a bit further. Spread the names! He also orders the use of a different method to spread the names and urges everyone to hurry. The mysterious creature in the shadows only thinks that it is eager for it. It is eager for the day when it will feed on the most powerful. Then, news appears about a person named Kim Juhyeok from the Valhalla Academy, who ended the disaster after eradicating the monsters. This is seen by someone on a website. The person in question is quite stylish. This individual was reading the news and admiring the protagonist's achievements. The man's question was how he managed to handle all the monsters that had escaped while also eliminating the dungeon so quickly. The more he watched, the more convinced he became that this kid was perfect for enhancing the reputation of the Alchemist's Guild. This guy is Baekjang John, but it wasn't what I expected. John asked someone next to him if it wouldn't be great for their reputation to kill that kid. The masked person agrees completely with John but advises them to be cautious in their actions. This kid is not the same as when they watched him during the academy entrance test. He is definitely at S level now. They decide that they need to do something about it, and will gather the team for that. Then, we finally return to the Valhalla dormitory. Our protagonist seems to attract enemies like a magnet. I know he stands out a lot, but it's not normal for so many people to want to go after him. He came home exhausted after solving a major problem and facing another 200 enemies. Juhyeok reflects on how he absorbed all the mana stones and grew stronger, and yet, he hasn't reached his limit. He's always winning his battles, and his power is ahead of the enemies so far. However, he feels his magical capacity is relatively small. Dealing with that dungeon boss was more complicated than he expected. His body is exhausted. He even comments that it's much easier when he has a contract with a constellation. Using another person's magical power is very useful. His mind was boiling with thoughts about future problems, and because of this, he decided to use his disposable teleportation stone. The mysterious red-haired girl surprises him now in her dimension. She seems bored when alone and gets quite excited when her visitor finally appears. Juhyeok explains that he managed to handle the situation and defeat the boss. This magic stone was meant for emergencies, but it's fine since he succeeded in his mission. But she became curious about the spear he brought. He explains that it was from the dungeon boss and wasn't absorbed with him or disappeared, so he decided to bring it. This is nothing but curious. The girl asks to see the ring. It's safe and there's no problem returning it to her. The girl takes the item, and a pink smoke comes out of the ring. Then she returns it to the protagonist. She confirms that the name was absorbed correctly and says that the real game will begin now. Surely, the dungeon master will take the next step. She believes that powerful names will appear now, so she will take a peek to check. But even before doing that, the girl mentions that it is likely to be the people from the Destruction Tower whom he defeated 300 years ago. Our legendary hero soon remembers certain people, feeling a bitter taste just thinking about meeting those bastards again. He actually says he got angry just thinking about it. The girl told him to cheer up, saying that before those names appear, they will meet again. So, he should be glad. I think for him, meeting this girl is not something to be glad about. An interesting point is that Barche was the master of the Destruction Tower, but he doesn't remember the people who were there. Juhyeok says that on the first floor there were only insignificant monsters. If Barche were to remember those people, they would be on the second floor or higher. Their conversation about this is not very important. The question that arises for our protagonist is, if the tower reappears, shouldn't Barche be summoned again as its master? This possibility leaves Barche stunned, but he soon says he was forced to be the tower's owner last time. The constellation said all this while stuttering. The reason was to avoid becoming a target for the protagonist again, and for him to think about killing her as a precaution. Although our protagonist didn't think it was a bad idea, he says he trusts Barche. But still, it's strange to him that Barche has no power if his name was taken. When he thinks about his disciples, they have some power. Now, this guy is a mess and doesn't even have memories. Additionally, the protagonist says that Barche was reborn just like him, not becoming a constellation like the people who lost their names. He continues to be puzzled by the script's puzzle. Because of this, he decides that it's better to keep focusing on training constantly to achieve the same strength as in his past life. So, another pleasant night passes. The next day, after school, Sehuk was going to work out while thinking about the fight he saw that day. No matter how he thinks about it, that guy is amazing. He knows Juhyeok was much stronger than everyone else, but deep down, he didn't want to admit it to himself. Now, he can't even deceive himself. And not only that, all those girls who were taught by him became much stronger and surpassed him. Alright, he is determined. If he was trained by Juhyeok, he can also become stronger. When he opened the door, he found something he could not have seen. A girl fervently smelling someone's clothes. Yes, Yenlang was sniffing a towel. Her face leaves no doubt that she was doing something something that should be a girl's secret. 30 minutes ago, she was running intensely on the treadmill. After finishing her routine and being praised by her master, the protagonist gave her a towel he had used. He used the towel in the same way. The girl tries to beat Sundara but can't manage it. Aram also recognizes the progress of the kitten and points out that there's another girl here who was more sedentary. Help, this is madness. Makema says that this training is too heavy for a human, but our MC claims it's actually quite light. Nothing like a good tease to make the girl push herself harder. She also says that Juhyeok's training is better than that of a certain someone. They started arguing about something trivial, and our protagonist enjoys seeing these moments with his students. He ordered everyone to rest now, and Aram became curious about what Juhyeok was going to do next. He was going back to the dormitory to train magical abilities. In this case, Aram decided to do the same. They left, and Makima was going to follow the same path. But before leaving, she wanted to know if Yanlang wouldn't be going too. The girl said she wasn't tired yet, and would do some more exercises. Notice, Makima left and advised her rival not to overexert herself. So, Yanlang was left alone in the school gym. At this moment of solitude, the girl began to reflect on certain things about that hand. Don't rush, it's nothing wrong. She was thinking about how she feels she's getting stronger with Juhyeok's training, but that guy continues to be an exception to any rule. There shouldn't be anyone capable of defeating monsters like that. She's also very happy to see that he's getting stronger while training with them. He's incredible. Yanlang tries to remember why she became his disciple. Her goal was to surpass him, but now she's sure that he's so insane that it's impossible to achieve that. In fact, she admits she's already overwhelmed by the training, so she doesn't believe she can surpass him. So why does she continue being his disciple? Her heart races, and she remembers when he defended her and then solved all her problems. It's not so simple. It seems that everything in her life now revolves around him. Realizing this, her heart starts to thump. Could it be pheromones? As her heart races, she misses him and has an urge to do strange training sessions with Juhyeok. There's no avoiding it. She's thinking perverted things about him. There's no stopping those thoughts now. Maybe that helps. She looks at the towel he used. Is this something strange? It doesn't matter anymore. She picks up the towel to wash and return it to him. That idiot forgot it, so I can't avoid it. What's this smell? My heart is trembling, and my body feels strange. Maybe no one will see this, right? So, just a little. Please help me reach 3,000 likes to bring the complete work with all the chapters to you. Spicy things are coming. What the fuck? Yanlang was caught with his nose in the wrong place. Sehyuk just wanted to find the protagonist and asked to be trained too, but now that she saw Yanlang's weaknesses, she decided to eliminate the witnesses. With that punch he must die or lose his memories. It was really a big gratuitous scam. The girl didn't expect to be caught in such an embarrassing moment. She actually cried with shame. Meanwhile, our protagonist was in his room training his mana control. He was very concentrated and was interrupted by the cell phone ringing. It was late, so he answered, curious if it was an emergency. Adelia found herself calling so late, but it's important. Mrs. Constellation is awake. That's great. He thanked Adelia for the good news and asked her to reserve her time. He was eager to see his students face to face. More important than that, we see the black cat terrified when he sees his master furious about something that happened. His constellation was about to lose its mind. Poor man. The reason for this started 10 minutes ago. He was working and monitoring things at the gym. His master asked him to check the cameras regularly for her. He saw no reason to do so, but he did not refuse. He accidentally saw the footage from the classroom and saw a body thrown out. He was terrified because there was a body at his school, but when he zoomed in he saw that he was just unconscious. His master asked him to go back to the recording to find out what happened, and that was how they discovered that it was Yanlang who attacked the student. She just destroyed him when he entered the room. The constellation saw on the cameras that the girl took advantage of Juhyeok's used towel and smelled it. Now she can't contain her jealousy. Guys, help me get 3,000 likes on this video so I can bring more fencing lesson videos. I know you can do it if you are motivated.